Fasten the seatbelts, batten down the hatches. I've got a gale force one-up yours coming for you.
That's kind of insensitive to the people in the South who lost their homes and lives in the tornadoes last week. Like in my home state of Kentucky. Just thought I'd point that out here at the beginning.
Look,
of the show.
I've lived both in Tornado Alley and on the Gulf Coast, and I know what a gale force storm is. And this motherfucker right here is a gale force storm.
Here comes a tsunami of fun. Woo!
Whatever you got to. That's the Shane. That's the Shane route right there. Anyway, this is the One Up Yours podcast for Friday, February 15th, and it is the first assemblage of the new four all in one room. That's me, Shane Bettenhausen, right there next to me, Brian Intihar next to him, and Sean Elliott over here.
Surfing the Wajah tsunami.
And on top of that...
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. How much would you pay for this? I don't know. It's free, and you get N-Guy Kroll from Newsweek and the Level Up blog.
And he's worth like $12.95.
At least.
At least.
At least. Billy Mays Hayes would be all over that.
Thanks for having me on the show again, guys. You know I love coming on the podcast. I was going to make the analogy, which I made before we started recording, that I feel especially honored because the Fantastic Four is reunited and I get to be here on your first show, which I guess makes me She-Hulk. And Skip would be Herbie. But you compared me, I guess, to the Ginsu knife. I'd be the Ginsu knife in the
Dude, you can be the Ginsu knife. Man, you can go through a tomato and go right to a Coke can. It's awesome.
That's me.
And how big a show is this? Not only do we have all that, not only do we have what you've been playing, not only do we have community and GDC upcoming stuff and a little talk about the cult of developer celebrity, but in the news section, we're kicking it all off.
Holy shit, it's NBDs.
With the NBDs.
Shane, how happy are you?
I'm what?
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about that.
NBDs are fun.
I like the NBDs. They're fun. All right, so let's get right into it. We have so much we got to pack into here, so we're going to get started right now. What you been playing, Brian?
So, actually, I did something different this weekend. I really love first-person shooters, but when it comes to multiplayer, I'm not very good. So I just figured I would go around the horn and just play all of them. I played Resistance Online again, which surprisingly has still a lot of players online. The game's been out for over almost a year and a half now, and still has a pretty big following, which I was surprised.
Good servers.
Yeah, I mean,
good servers, great frame rate, good game.
Well, didn't the expansion pack just come out?
Yeah, but you know what the thing is? So I downloaded the packs, but I did, and I just made it I searched for only play on map pack 2.
Not so
no
much.
one's playing it, so that was kind of disappointing. And then I played Halo 3, and going from Resistance 2, which is very twitching fast.
You mean Resistance 1?
Yeah.
You said Resistance
2. Freudian slip there.
Sorry,
whatever. Why are you trying to steal my thunder?
Oh! Brian, that was kind of loud. You might want to
sorry.
bring it down a little notch.
That's right. Sorry, I might have blown your eardrum. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I went to Halo 3, and going from Resistance, which is really twitching fast, to go to Halo, I felt like someone slowed everything down, but I realized that why Ruby plays it. It's a really great multiplayer experience. I still suck at it, but I got 2 triple kills, which I was very excited about.
Triple kills, killing sprees. That's what you do, Brian.
Yeah. So but it made me want to go back and play all the way through online co-op with 3 other people, which I still haven't done yet. I did the little Legendary back when it was released.
It's a lot of fun playing co-op.
It's awesome, and it makes me realize that that's how I really want to play. Games from now on, just especially co-op online.
If you do 4, you should do Legendary.
Yeah, I know. I heard the same thing.
Just saying.
And then I went back to Team Fortress 2, and that game is so good. So good. I'm disappointed it doesn't get the love it deserves on consoles.
And you're playing on 360, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, we got the PC master right here in Sean, and you're even talking about on 360.
Did you get the new map today?
Isn't that PC
it's
only?
PC only.
Is it PC?
I wasn't sure.
Exactly. Hence the reason I'm pissed.
It's an awesome map too.
See, I get screwed again being a console guy. Well, no, my new position now. I gotta learn more of the PC stuff. So maybe I'll get.
It's time to teach
That's
you.
right.
Yeah, why don't you learn to play on the PC?
Because I already suck on the
indoctrinate
console.
everyone.
I already suck in the console. I'm probably gonna get killed on the PC side. I don't know.
We'll get you like a 50 billion DPI mouse and some awesome Wolf King crazy keyboard that's got circles of keys that don't make any sense altogether, and you'll be awesome.
Or you can go around like Ryan and be a medic all the time and be one of my banana riders.
Medic.
So basically that's what I did. I call it the first person shooter weekend. That's what I did.
All right. So which one do you have the most fun with?
Right now, Team Fortress 2. By far. I love the different classes. I think it's really cool. I love the little humor it's in there.
And did he? I'm like trying to run back through all there real quick. You didn't say Call of Duty 4?
I passed.
Why?
I can't get into it.
Really?
Nah, it's not.
Online?
It's not my cup of tea.
Man, I'm just thinking. I mean, if you're looking for an online multiplayer shooter, how do you not figure that one in the mix? So what about it not?
Actually, well, one reason I ran out of time.
Oh well, I mean,
and
yeah.
I just I did it when it first came out, and I finished the single player. Then I went to try multiplayer, and I probably haven't given enough time. It just didn't grab me. I felt like I would get in there 2 seconds, I was dead. I just didn't. It's not for me right now. I would rather play the other three for sure.
All right, that's cool. That's it.
That's
you're a multiplayer shooter man.
Well, yeah. I mean, I really haven't had time. I know everybody knows about the reorg and stuff, so I've been kind of busy doing that kind of stuff. So I haven't really time.
Also,
to play a lot of games.
EGM was on like a pretty serious deadline.
Oh man,
that we just got off
was
of.
brutal.
So not a lot of time for fun times.
Finished up that magazine. What were you playing then, Shane?
Well, I've been playing Lost Odyssey, and I talked about that in the one. I'm sure you can see that. But Burnout Paradise continues to be a serious addiction. I mean, I've said before, it's the first PS3 game where if I turn on my PS3, I know my friends are on. I know I can get a game going with my friends every night, and it's just so much fun. I love Burnout Paradise. At first, I thought maybe I had overscored it because there's such limited content out of the box, but I'm still addicted. I'm still having a great time, and I'm starting to catch wind of the dice, and people are talking about the DLC that's coming, and I can't wait. I mean, any amount of DLC is going to make me excited, but from what I've heard, it's going to be really, really good stuff and things everybody wants and things that even surprise people. So I don't see myself stopping Burnout anytime soon. And why haven't you played with me? Like, you have it.
Dude, I'm on every night.
No, you're not.
Actually, I am.
No, you're not.
So I got a question for you. You don't see me on my PS3 when I'm playing Yakuza then, do you?
No, it doesn't show you what you're playing. Does
it say playing PS2 or something?
No, you just go off. Like, it's like watching a Blu-ray. Like, you come on, you come off, Yeah. So you've been playing Yakuza all week.
Yeah, I've been.
Well, this weekend, Burnout, dude.
All right, definitely. So what do you guys usually play when you hop on?
Like, me and my friends will, we'll just fuck around for a while, do a few challenges, and then we start these long race, like 3, 4, 5 round races. It start out like really simple single races where it's just like a really short straight shot. But then it's fun to also do the epic long ones with, lots of checkpoints out in the woods and. Like, I don't know, Burnout is just super fun. I really love it.
Don't you think Burnout would be like an ideal candidate for a game to be ripped to your hard drive, to just have it there
forever?
Yeah, because it's the perfect sort of, you get home and you're just like, to me it feels like the games I have on PSN and Xbox Live Arcade in some way where it's sort of, what I love about having games that are stored on the hard drive is it turns your console into something much more like a television with your program guide, so you kind of scroll through it. Like, yeah, we can all obviously get up and put the disc in and take a disc out, but it's really nice to just have stuff there and rather be like going to your library or your shelf and say, which of these games do I want to play? Just like browse it right there.
Are you sure you're just not really lazy?
I'm extremely lazy. My trainer would probably prefer that everything be on disc, so I would at least move a little more. But
Got to get him up off the couch to at least go pop in the disc.
Exactly.
But also, playing all this Burnout has made me kind of excited to try Midnight Club LA because it's a similar concept, open world city thing. And when they brought it by a few months ago, it showed some promise, and they haven't shown it in a while. So,
however, in the past previous Midnight Clubs, they've never matched the Burnout games for overall feel.
Yeah,
that's true.
And I don't expect it to be
close.
as instantly fun because, like, the reason I love Burnout is because it's so forgiving, and you don't have to be good at racing games to actually have a good time.
Well, it's a game that took wrecking and made it into like a party.
Exactly.
Which is fucking fantastic. So you don't get tight about it. I tell you what, the most amazing thing to me about Burnout, and Shane playing it particularly, is that if you had told me, like even 6 months ago, that Shane would be talking about a racing game and have a twinkle in his fucking eye.
Garnet, do I need to remind you?
No, he was from day one when he saw that game. He was
No,
I've
told the story million times.
No, but I mean other racing games.
Yeah.
Other racing games, though.
I like racing games. I'm GT. No, I'm not somebody who like tweaks the camber of my engine or whatever that is. But I love Motorstorm.
You did love Motorstorm.
I love arcade racing games. I love
rep some
Wipeout. I
Motorstorm.
love F-Zero. I love Mario Kart. I like arcadey racing games. Always have. Daytona. I love it.
how did you feel about the changes? How did you feel about no
Burnout?
aftertouch? How did you feel about no restart? How did you feel about those things that the kids were complaining
I
about?
defend the lack of restart. I think that the way the game is designed, where there's always a new challenge waiting when you fail, I think that's okay. And my only complaint is I do not think Showtime is as fun as Crash Mode. I know Garnet disagrees with me.
Well, I like the way you're constantly watching the meter and trying to keep it filled up while at the same time balancing that with doing more
I don't
reps.
think it's without value, but I would have liked to have both that and Crash Mode.
I mean, so there's no reason they can't add that in as DLC,
and like the
right?
DLC, what I heard, it's going to be awesome.
Because the argument of what people love about the old Crash Mode is it's like a puzzle, is that you have to find the way
that's
to...
gone now.
Right,
Yeah.
But in exchange for that, like we've called it a million times, like that skateboard kind of thing where you're like trying to go through...
See, my thing is I think Showtime is only fun in certain parts of the city. Other times it's like you're waiting for things to happen. I don't know.
Yeah. It isn't fun everywhere.
Right. Moving on, the other game I've been spending a lot of time with was actually a review game, which is Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, people are dying to hear about that, dude.
I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan, and specifically I love Final Fantasy VII, but the compilation of Final Fantasy VII has been, a tragic, downward spiral of sorrow. Dirge Cerberus, there was no fun to be had there. Skip and I both played it.
Oh my god, yeah.
Appropriately titled.
Oh, yeah, but maybe partially because expectations are so low, but Crisis Core is what you really want out of this. Initially, it seems really limited. I think if people who just try it for a few minutes, you're like, "What's up with this game? I can't." It's so simple. You're just one character. You're running around. You're mashing a button. So it seems like
Milky playing this on the bus, as we take the same bus in.
Right.
So I've seen him a couple times playing on the bus for a review. It reminded me of you and Culdicept. It's like he's talking to me, listening to his iPod, and punching the X button.
Well, it's funny you
on
say
the
that
PSP,
because actually, Crisis Core would be a really great game to play while playing Culdicept because it doesn't require it doesn't require your complete attention, and
you could still get in your EW reading.
That's a whole new definition
but no,
of multiplayer.
Crisis Core, in addition to having among the best graphics on PSP and having a really well-told story that doesn't cheese out, it doesn't it's not everything you expect it's going to be. But the combat becomes so much better as you progress. In the very beginning, you have very few moves. It seems very simple, like a Kingdom Hearts kind of mash thing. But as you gain new skills and as you get new abilities, it actually becomes like a really solid action RPG with tight control where you can dodge spells.
Okay, so what's up with the one-up control?
What do you mean?
I mean, with the one button control. What's up with that?
What do you mean one button control?
Why is it just one button? What does the one button do? Tell me, how does combat work?
Well, at the beginning, so you're just running around in a field. It's like Parasite Eve, actually. You're running around, and turns are happening, but it's in complete real time. So when your turn fills up, you get to pick what you want to do. So at the beginning, all you can really do is attack or maybe cast fire. And your enemies are taking turns too. But as you progress, you can jump, you can dash, you can block, you can roll. And you really are doing these things. So you can evade a spell, which you've never been able to do in Final Fantasy before. And the controls are good. The battles are really fast, really fun. There's almost no load times, which is impressive for a PSP game. There's no load times for combat. And there's some really random stuff. You've probably seen those slot machines that show up during combat. And that's called the DMW system. And it's completely inexplicable and baffling. And nobody really understands it, but it's kind of addictive in a weird way because you'll randomly roll these things that give you now you have unlimited magic points, or now you have 4 times as many hit points as you used to have, or it just gives you an effect during battle. And the game's kind of easy, so that makes it fun. I don't know. It's a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Well, story-wise, spoiler alert for those people who haven't played Final Fantasy VII.
Aerith dies. Hi.
Oh, God.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go.
Spoiled it. What does it feel like playing and rolling with a character that is going to die?
So this character Zack, he you don't really get his full story in 7. You get it through these flashbacks, and Cloud thinks he's him. So it handles it really well, and you get to go through all those things that he did, and you get to see them from his perspective and how he relates to Sephiroth. There's a lot of cutscenes, a lot of voice cutscenes, like him dealing with Sephiroth, him dealing with Cloud, him dealing with Aerith. These are things you never saw before, and they actually brought back the scenarist Nojima who wrote 7 to do it, and it's handled well. The localization's good. The voices are largely good.
So it's not fan service.
I mean, it is. I mean, the game is fan service, but it's handled well, and it doesn't feel cheap in the way that Dirge of Cerberus did.
Mm-hmm.
This feels like it belongs and it should exist. And the real thing is, this isn't the way to go out. Since they finally did it right, since they finally got a 7 spin-off right, it would suck for them to stop now.
I was going to just ask you, so we know how slow 13 and Versus 13 is coming along. You think we'll see the remake on PS3?
Well, I mean, just Nomura was saying this week that until his schedule and Kitase's schedule are more free, he doesn't think they can do it. So I think it's still a few years away.
So where does this fit in the 7 spectrum of stories?
This is before. This is a prequel.
Okay,
but I believe it takes place before Crisis, which was a cell phone game. I think.
Well, right, but North American audience, we're all ignorant to that.
And it's cool because from the outset, you're in these locations. You're in Midgar. You're in Wutai. You're in these towns and they look better because it's real 3D, and the graphics, as I said, are phenomenal.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, I think if you're a 7 fan, you have a PSP, it's a no-brainer.
Story is definitely taking front because, like, one of the things that I did recently is I finished Yakuza. I forced myself through to the end because we were talking about gamer fatigue last week. Did you hear us talk about that, guy?
I did not.
Okay, so one of our board.
He's not a fan.
One of our board questions.
He was a dice. I didn't listen last week either.
Was do you get gamer fatigue? Like, do you get worn out? Have the point where you're struggling forward the game, and I was definitely getting that with Yakuza because Totillo and I have been arguing about this a lot. He did not like Yakuza because the combat system in it gets really monotonous.
But I think it gets better as you progress, much like Crisis Core, because you get new moves.
You get new moves, but it doesn't. It's not the highlight of the game. Do you think?
No, I think the storytelling and the way it presents the environment is the highlight of the game.
So that for me, exactly, that's the highlight of the game. And I was so glad that I made myself finish the game because in the last 2 to 3 chapters, it blew me away with how strongly it pulled off almost like a Godfather sort of epic gangster story and a true dramatic tragedy. I mean, it's
dark.
It's a true dramatic tragedy that you really, really care about the characters in and are completely caught up in the story, has a ton of twists, which it pulls off somehow. I mean, when you're pulling off these crazy twists of so-and-so is, working for one faction, but it turns out that they're a spy for another faction, but instead because they're have a romantic engagement with someone else, they're going to stab even someone else in the back. And that's very easy to fall apart. It's very easy for you to get to a point where you're like, you know what, this is ridiculous. And it manages to hold all that together through, it had excellent voice acting. The localization was clearly very good because the dialogue really works. The conversations don't sound forced or strained. There's a good rapport between the different characters, and they're very believable. And it just comes together so well. I tell you, that game does. We talked about stories also in games last week. We're going to talk about it again in Community this week. That game got it so
What would you have given
right.
that on the EGM scale, the old EGM scale?
On the old EGM scale?
Yeah.
You know what? After finishing it,
because I gave it an 8, I think.
I would have given it an 8.5, but it would have been the best 8.5 ever.
Yeah,
I couldn't give it a 9 because the combat is broken. The inability to keep your character facing the right direction gets very frustrating. The way they'll get around and get a shot on you from behind because you just carried past them.
But I think its successes are very unique, and as like a modern RPG, which no one else is really trying to do.
It's an RPG?
Basically, it's like a modern RPG mixed with a brawler, mixed with an adventure game.
It looked like a GTA type game when I saw it.
Yeah, and they kind of tried to sell it like that, but that's not what it is. I mean, there are random encounters.
How is it integrating this narrative that you're talking about?
So the narrative is integrated primarily through cutscenes told both in game and in a cinematic, stage
They're pretty
thing.
good.
I actually got to the point where I was like, why didn't you just keep it all in-game engine? Because it all works really well, right? It's very close. What'll happen is you'll enter into an area and it'll just pick up and take over for you, and then you'll have the scene that plays out. It'll be staged, and that's actually probably another part that really worked well for the storytelling is that those scenes are obviously directed by someone who has a cinematic background because they're staged properly. Right. The characters are in the right places, and the camera moves at the right time. Right, it has that right quality to it, and then it doesn't break you because in the last scene you'll be in that scene, and it'll pick up from there back in the game again.
Well, here's a philosophical question, because you said you would give it an 8.5, even though the combat is broken. Right.
So this is Go ahead.
So the question is, in film, commercial film, you're telling stories. It's a narrative medium, even though it's being told through images. So, would you give a movie an 8.5 out of 10 if the story sucked? The story was broken. The language you used.
Good question.
But the images were great.
Well, I think that actually the analogy that I would make would be if let's keep them on an even keel here, which is if the story was great, because this is a point here that both of them are narrative delivery. And if the story was great and the cinematography was shit,
because gameplay isn't it's not art in the same way that it is, but
No, but that's
This
why
is
I asked the question.
I was incredulous when you were saying how good the story was, and I was like, God, how did I miss this? Because I'm a fan of games with good narrative. But then when you said it was cutscenes, it was immediately irrelevant to me because the cutscenes are just like they might as well not be part of the game. They're just
but Sean, I think other elements of the story,
fanfic or
like
something.
I think the environment. I think he's underselling how incredibly this game sells its environment. As someone if you've been to Tokyo, you've been to Kabukicho, it does such an excellent job, in visually, sound, design, like just the conversations you'll hear walking past people, the little mini games you can go and do in these places. Well, all that is part of the storytelling in this game, beyond the non-interactive cinemas.
And that I would say is the more interesting part for me. The storyline insofar as a game as it works in the game would be the order of events and the personal narrative that you create through the course of your play. A good example would be in Battlefield, where your personal narrative for one spawn might include parachuting and wing walking and commandeering tanks and throwing grenades and flanking maneuvers and all this stuff, whereas like in GTA you might be able to trace back and say my story involved all of these things, and then there's
like
the formal story,
right? Story.
And then there's the formal story when it plays the movie on the screen, and it's very difficult for me to feel that the one is.
I hear where you're coming from.
Yakuza does them both. It really
does. But
like,
part of that personal narrative about what you're talking about is very rote stuff that you're accustomed to if you played this sort of game. It's a brawler with a series of random battles, not random because you do see the guys they run up to go, hey you motherfucker. But it is, by the way, this game wins the award for the most instances of fuck ever.
I would consider those random encounters actually.
Right. Well, because you can run away from them. You can't run away from them if you're fast. And then you fight all of the Yakuza bosses, which does give you some of that, you played the narrative part to it. But don't be too quick to dismiss storytelling in a game as fanfic, because this is not fanfic level.
Well, no, I'm not dismissing storytelling in a game.
written.
I'm dismissing cutscene storytelling in a game. It's very different.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is, I understand that there are people who do that, and I don't begrudge you for doing that. If you want to get your cinematic delivery of stories through movies and television shows or read books, that's certainly your prerogative. But I enjoy getting it like this because it gives me context for being interested in Kazuma and all the other, or Kazuma and all the other characters that are in there, and it does it by having much higher than fanfic quality narrative delivered through those cutscenes.
Well, just to go back to what I was saying, not to put too fine a point on it, but the reason I brought up and said what I said is because so at DICE...
We didn't really answer your question, did we?
No, you didn't, but you get another chance. I finally got to catch up with Andy Mack, the editor of Game Informer, and asked him a question that had been on my mind ever since I'd read Reiner's review of Mass Effect. So I'm reading through the review, and it's all about the amazing story. So the first 2/3 is how good the story is. The last third, for the most part, is about how the gameplay is broken.
Okay.
And then it concludes, and the score is a 9.5. Now, fortunately, this is part of the reason why I don't score games, why I don't review games, and why I don't assign numbers. But I was just like, but gameplay is the essence of games. Like it's like the core. So if the gameplay is broken, how do you give it a 9.5?
Well, I'll disagree that the gameplay is not broken, but that's the whole
another good analogy would be like, for me, I mean, even if it's not quite fanfic, it like, I understand there's people that clearly enjoy, even they play Devil May Cry, they love the cutscenes, watch every second, they wouldn't think of skipping it. But for me, just as naturally as you're interested in that, I'm just as naturally indifferent to it. And for me,
I get that.
The reason what it brings to mind for me is like, it's just there in the same way that there's like a plot to differentiate like Colossal Porn Combos Volume 13 from Volume 16 or something. I mean,
Nice. I just got relegated to the back aisle of the Castle bookstore.
Colossal Combos is a real series too, man.
Nice.
Oh my god.
All right, so
are you excited for Yakuza 2, even if it's subtitled?
Are you kidding me? I'm totally crazy for Yakuza 2. I'm not sure I want one in feudal Japan. I get the idea. I will give them a chance, but I'm super gung-ho to see a continuation of the story, especially after the way it ended. I mean, holy crap, Did you finish it?
Yes.
Oh my God, we have to talk about it because like the way it ended, the last 2 chapters just it was fantastic. And then the other thing that so this is technically not a been playing, but it was a been seeing this week. EA brought by the final and actually certified and ready to go to manufacturing Army of 2.
Tampons removed.
Man,
they took them out.
Let me tell you what.
So you can actually review the game now, and they won't call you up and ask you to pull your review?
Hey, at least.
Well, you know what? It's an interesting case.
At least they realized, though, the game.
Yeah, should we commend them?
I think we should be
somewhat
commending them.
Yeah, it's a super interesting
even
case.
Even though, like, hey, I would rather them say, hey, listen, the game's not ready, pull it down, and give us 6 months. So I wish more companies would do that.
That's a pretty ballsy move, and I mean, I'm out there like talking about news. I've been critical of Riccatello about the way he made a presentation at DICE, which we're going to talk about in news. But in this case, he's the guy that ultimately said to the studio in Canada, "Hey, if you can use that time to make this game better, take it." That's fucking ballsy.
But an interesting thing is a lot of publications had finished their reviews of this game. They didn't. None of them got published in America. In Europe, some of them did. But it'll be interesting to see what this version 6 months later scores, because we know what it scored before.
Well, here's the thing. Do you think that? I mean, you score the game that's in front of you.
Yes.
But do you think the reviewers should sort of talk about, like, incorporate that into the thing, or at least sort of talk about that, or do you think you should just let it go?
Not really. I just let it go. I mean, that's not the game you're reviewing.
But if the problem's still there, you say it. If it's not, you move on. So I'm
reviewing it.
Andrew's on the review,
and he had reviewed it previously in October.
Right. So I mean, I'll just tell you this from watching it. First of all, they certainly put the time to good use visually. Yeah,
because it was weird when we first saw it. It looked awesome, and then they changed engines.
Dude, my question is, did they add more?
It's not Unreal anymore?
I heard they had changed engines.
No, it's still. I bet it's still Unreal.
My question is, did they record more voice, more
now.
dialogue?
Yes, I guess so. I mean, the voice, from what we saw, the voice acting was definitely in there. But the most standout piece to me was that, having played the Uncharted and the Gears and all those sort of games, and I'm using those two specifically, is that it's on that level now. And actually, I would say that visually, what they showed us looked like Resistance with Uncharted sort of color palette and lighting to it, and it was pretty freaking good looking. It was pretty freaking good looking.
Because I remember when I first saw that game a couple of years ago at E3, it looked really awesome, and then it started getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then,
well, let's put it this way: over 2 months of polish piled on to with the. I mean, the graphics guys were just sitting around repolishing and repolishing and repolishing. They put that shit to good use.
Cool. Okay, I got a list of questions for you.
All right. Well, so let me throw one other thing out there real quick, which we're just hearing about today, which is among their multiplayer modes. They have one that's coming out post-release. They're committed to doing DLC for it. It's probably going to be paid. I guess it's going to be paid. It's going to be paid content. But one of them that they showed us in video form is basically so all the modes are 2-on-2 because it's Army of Two and they're into that. And one of them is basically the American Gladiators. Like a version of American Gladiators, where there's an obstacle course that two obstacle courses that intertwine with each other, that the two teams are racing simultaneously with live ammo. So while you're going, so the object obviously is to be the first team to get across the finish line. While you're going through this, you can either stop, try and harry the other team, have one guy stop and suppress the other team with fire while the other guy runs ahead and tries to break through the obstacles, or just run balls out and try to get through it as fast as possible.
That's pretty cool.
That looked really cool. That looked potentially really, really cool.
Yeah.
So
maybe you should have shipped with the beginning product, the final
Well,
product.
I think, actually, so what happened is this is something that the multiplayer team started working on during that period of time because they had already finished up everything they had.
Gotcha.
So they had time on their hands and they're saying, okay, well, we're going to start working on DLC. Hey, let's try this idea we had.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
So, first question.
25.
How are the enemy animations and behaviors?
The enemy, so there's two big questions there, right? One of them is behaviors, and one of them is animations. Animations look strong. They obviously have a physics engine that's playing in there, so guys, they blow up and they move accurately, and there's, all that kind of stuff that makes the environment look realistic.
Ragdoll.
Yeah, and it's not overly ragdoll, but it's definitely ragdolled, and so that's fine. The enemy behaviors, we were in an early area, and it was actually in the part of the training levels, and the guys were pretty easy to knock off. And so, who knows? That's something you have to see the full game to get a spectrum for, right? Because it's going to start off really easy, and by the middle point of the game, you're hoping that they're taking cover and not just wandering out in front of your machine guns. And we won't know that until we see the final review.
Wait, I have a question. Does the aggression meter feel like a gimmick?
Yeah, but a cool gimmick. I think I've always thought it felt like a gimmick, but I always thought it felt like a gimmick that was kind of cool. So the aggression meter, for those who are listening, is this deal where you're playing as an army of two, and if one guy is out there getting the attention of the enemy, he's starting to fill up this thing called the aggro meter. And if he gets the aggro meter completely filled up, then the other guy, in essence, becomes invisible because the enemy is so focused on the guy who's getting all the attention. And yeah, that's kind of a cool idea. Is it a gimmick? Sure. Obviously, anything like that's completely synthetic. I mean, obviously, it's like, oh, we're making this meter for how much attention this guy is getting, and he starts to glow red. Yeah.
If I shot some motherfucker 60 times and he didn't die, I would be aggro and focusing only on him, like rage.
Yeah, like completely, right? But at the same time, it's kind of a cool gimmick. It's kind of a cool gimmick in the same way that, like, when a guy dies, when one of you two dies, you're not actually dead. You're sort of incapacitated, and so you can go over and get your partner and drag him out of the line of fire and then try to administer some first aid to get him back up. I mean, there's lots of cool teamwork stuff like that, potentially. As
for that delay, the interesting thing to me is not that they are delaying it. I mean, I think it's a great thing that they are. Many studios do it. But the difference is that while another studio will sort of quietly say, we're missing our, we're slipping past our launch date, and then they'll just push it. EA, in this case, someone at EA presumably saw fit to send the game out in the state that it was in. And that's the difference. I don't know if it's like a quality control issue or what.
But
that's an interesting question. How high
the pressure came from.
But it was a reactionary delay. They wouldn't have reviewed it. I mean, the thing is, would it have been delayed had review scores not started coming back to them? That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't, and it was more than review scores. It was.
Why did the review scores come? Sorry to interrupt, but this is really important. Why did the review scores come back to them before they were published?
Probably what happened was that maybe reviewers were starting to ask questions, because I mean, when you're reviewing a game and like something just seems really out of whack or weird, you ask the publisher like, hey,
they don't tell my score.
I'm not saying, but I'm saying we didn't maybe give scores, or people didn't give scores, but there's so many complaints and so many questions. It's like,
just because we didn't give scores doesn't mean that other outlets didn't tell them what they were giving it.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I was just wondering if you had confirmation.
Right. And European reviews,
they knew.
European reviews made it out. Some of them.
My thinking is that what happens is people sent a lot of questions. If they didn't give the score, they sent a lot of questions like, "What's this? Why is this happening? What's this going on? Is this going to be fixed?" Mm-hmm. And they start just adding all this stuff up and going, if they're either asking this many questions, the score's got to be going down. And then they're like,
well, you have to remember, no one sets out to make a bad game, and the team itself may not have the best perspective. We don't know what metrics they use internally to gauge it, so it's. If the reviewers are sort of that first line, and if through whatever means the indication they're getting back, okay, there's a gap, a significant enough gap between what we think the game is and what reviewers think the game is, then we need to address that.
But also, isn't EA notorious for hiring people to review their game for them before the
they'll
press
they'll
gets
have
it?
consultants. I've done that before, but they should also, if they're wise, be doing.
I'd fire that consultant who let that.
As much as I dislike the notion of like focus groups and focus group games, but I mean having playtests with a wide range of people that are indicative of who ultimately they think their consumers are going to be. I mean, that's invaluable information.
Focus groups aren't a bad thing. I mean, I was talking to Ted Price last night. Actually, we were at dinner, and he was basically saying that. I mean, Insomniac is really a sieve, or a sponge, I should say, for information. They just suck up. He was asking me opinions about various things, and not even just about games, not even just about his games. And for them, it's not about so much it's not about whether or not you do a focus group. It's what you do with the information. You can't let a focus group make your game for you. But at the same time, it's like you have to have the sense of how to interpret the data and sort of adjust. Because at the end of the day, certainly more than say novels or art. A game has to please its audience.
Absolutely.
It has to work.
Yeah.
It has to work.
And it's fairly easy to tell if people are having fun or not. I mean, you say if you have 50 people play your game and you just watch them from a two-way mirror, you can tell if they're enjoying themselves or if they're not.
But this was a console. This was a console release coming up for fourth quarter. I mean, let's think about this practically. They had a push pin on the calendar. They had a marketing plan that had been leading up to that. They'd had their cover shots. They'd had their previews. They'd had their online, blowouts. Everything was like building to this head of bringing it out in this window that they'd set up for it. So abandoning that is a significant deal.
Honestly, it was probably the best move overall, because even separately from the quality of the game, the fact of the matter is that I don't think it would have stood up against Call of Duty.
No, I agree.
It would have got lost in the holiday shuffle.
Absolutely.
And it does wind up in a really interesting spot now, coming out where it does.
I don't know. It's not that spring isn't competitive. There's a lot of good games out this spring.
Yeah, but it's not up against the likes of a Call of Duty 4 or a Halo 3 or
it's a month away from Grand Theft Auto.
a month away from.
But that's
true.
a,
EA
a
likes
big
to build
difference.
franchises
Yeah,
too.
BioShock was a month away from Halo 3. It's
true.
And it's up against the club.
Good.
They want to build a franchise with it in the way that they want to build a franchise with everything too. So there's more riding on it being the first game. Like if they if it was like the James Bond series and they're on their 8th game, they can afford to say, you know what, we'll take the C+ or the B- on this one. This one, it might throw their 5-year plan in disarray if it came out. And
they couldn't treat it like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Right. Enough Army of 2. Demo's coming sometime. They didn't say when, but you'll get a chance to see it soon. And
the last thing, they showed it to you on PS3 or 360.
They showed it on 360, but they did assure us that one of the other benefits that they've had is that people have talked about how EA was one of the people who said they had development issues. They have PS3 running as well as 360, and even sort of beat around the bush a little bit, saying that maybe there's some cases where it might look even a little better on PS3. So take that for what it's worth. We did not see it there. It'll be fine on PS3. How about that?
True.
There you go. And now, introducing the savior of PC
and
Wii.
Well, I disagree with that.
What?
Well, for one, because I don't think in those terms. I mean, like, just because I've enjoyed some games on Wii, and I don't, just cast it off, and I don't get caught up in console wars TM, it doesn't mean, you can't cast me in that same logic and say,
Sean,
that means he's the hero of the Wii.
You did trade your $599 PS3 for a $249 Wii, straight up trade.
I did,
right?
But not because I wanted to make sure that the Wii was saved or anything, because I wanted to play some games that were on the Wii, and I wasn't,
You can't buy one in a store, so there you go.
Yeah, and it was hard. It's still very difficult to get. I figured I can go back and it'll be fairly easy to get another PS3, and at the time, and I really wanted, my whole thing is with range. I play a certain variety of game on Xbox, and there's a lot of overlap to what I play on PC. And the Wii was like my girlfriend's system, It's like I saw nothing wrong with that. This is for this whole other thing, and that's why it's a kiddie system or whatever. It's fine. It's a game to play with my girlfriend, And I've been playing a lot of Wii Degree to the point that I wish it had a custom soundtrack so I could throw in some we don't have to take our clothes off to have a good time. We can solve some puzzles.
Do you like Big Brain Academy on Wii?
I think it's a great game.
Really?
I really enjoy playing it, yeah. It's a good game, but we're not going to talk about that.
We don't have to take our clothes off.
Wow.
That,
I think the listeners are getting scared.
So
Karaoke Revolution for the one.
I've been buying I'm not going to talk about these other than just say what I bought. I bought Wii Play with my own money, Rayman,
Cool.
Raving Rabbids 2.
You bought that with your own money?
Wii Degree, yes.
Had you played it previously?
I hadn't played any of these.
I wouldn't have bought Rayman Raving Rabbids 2. I
don't know if I would have.
Having played it, I would never buy it.
I got it used. I don't know if I would again. Wii Play I really like, and Wii Degree I most definitely would recommend. But again, if you're going to be playing it with you don't want to sit there. It would be kind of depressing to sit there and play that on your own.
It's a party game.
Yeah, even carnival games would be that way. And I ended up playing No More Heroes, the other sort of game. And of course I don't want to. This is my whole thing. I have to make all these disclaimers because I don't want everything I say to be, this means you're shitting on the Wii, or this means you're championing the Wii.
Brother, I was giving you too much shit. Don't sweat it.
Well, I'm actually really eager to play No More Heroes. I've been trying to get my hands on it. So.
I don't like it. I don't think it's a very good game.
Well, did you play Killer 7?
I did. I reviewed it for EGM.
All right, in that amount of time, there were just 5 utter fail posts.
Well, but even the fans, even the No More Heroes fans seem to admit that the open world and minigames aren't very well done.
It's not okay, here's the thing. You brought up Killer 7, and there's definitely something with Grasshopper Studios, the makers of both games, where I came into it thinking they're going to be playing with me. They're very clever, even though I didn't. In the same way, it's not like I hated Killer 7. I just, in the end, I didn't really like it.
It was. I wanted to like it. It's it's very smart and postmodern and funny and clever and artistic, but it's a bad game at the same time.
That's the thing. I read Killer 7's sort of postmodern message is attempting to communicate that gamers don't really read games by any of the surface stuff, by any of the presentation or anything, but just the fundamental mode of interaction. And that might be the movement options available to you, all these other things. And you can take and paint the most abstract picture on the top of that as you want, and people will immediately understand it because all that they're communicating with are the fundamentals of the interaction. So going into No More Heroes thinking, okay, I'm going to expect similar things. And every time I find a bad game, what at surface seems like a bad game design decision, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and try to figure out what they're trying to say. But I found it became increasingly impossible to excuse or explain some of the things that they were doing in this game. So for a quick overview of the game, it's a hack and slash, right? You go in, you have 10 assassins that you need to kill so that you can climb the assassin totem and claim the number 1 spot yourself. People have compared it to Kill Bill, but I mean that convention comes from everything.
From a game comparison, I think a comparison might be Shadow of the Colossus. That's a game where there's 14 bosses or 16 bosses that you go fight, and that's really it. And this game is kind of the same thing. And there's an open world you can go fuck around if you want, but you don't really have to.
However, here's the thing, like. I haven't finished it by any means. It's taken me a while. It's a difficult game. But the other problem is that I keep playing it. I'm like, I don't really want to play it. I'm not really into it. And it's not like it makes me upset or anything. It's just
you got better things to do.
I got better things to do. And so the combat stuff's fun. I like doing it. It's basically you use
how does the Wiimote?
You basically mash the button
moves,
to do strikes. However, the difference is that by holding the Wiimote up, you assume a high stance. Will be familiar to people who play, Tekken and Soul Calibur stuff. Tilt it down, you're in a low position. You have basically you just hit A to swing your sword, and then by hitting the B button, you're able to break their guard, whether they're high or low. There are more moves than that. But after you get their health down, you swing the Wiimote in one direction or the other to finish them off. It's totally fun. I mean, I like doing that, but. It's the usual, here's a bunch of clones, here's a bunch of the same guy. It's not quite like Ninja Gaiden or something where they're constantly mixing up the variety of enemies that you're facing, and maybe they do this later on, so I can't say, but and the tactics that they're using. Instead, it'll be like, there's 2 guys in this group, and they're going to be this uniform throughout this level, and you now know you beat a few, you know what they're up to, you're going to just repeat this.
And the AI doesn't surprise you or anything. No.
Not really, not in that respect. And then and that part is fine, I mean, that it was okay, it was kind of fun to do that. But then the open world part is an issue. But it's not just that you're wrong in to think that here's this game that's fundamentally about these assassination missions and this action levels, and then there's just this optional open world for you to explore. Explore is the wrong word. There's nothing really to explore, but to interact with it at your leisure. Instead, you're forced to do things. And when we say the open world here, imagine like a ghost town version of like a GTA city or something.
It's like nothing going on.
There's basically nothing going on. There are automatons walking the street and stuff, and no one will react or do anything to anything.
You can't hurt them. You can't.
No, you can't kill them or anything, and you can't. I mean, if you run full speed into another vehicle, you just come to an immediate stop. It's also the sort of game. You remember old racing games where you distinctly feel that the world is turning and you're staying stuck in the middle of the screen. That's how that operates.
Ridge Racer.
Yeah, it works like that, and then. So as you're going through this, it's almost, so here's one of those game design decisions I asked myself, right? I was like, why is the city here, right?
Right.
Why are they not making it fun? Are they making some kind of statement about these are the things that people just throw in games, and these are the features? If you look at a bullet point list of a game like a GTA or something, let's put them in here, but let's take out the fun and see what it has. What it says.
If it's a parody of this kind of game, it's successful, but that's not fun.
But that's the thing. Right. And that's the danger of all parody games. If it is a parody, like Bard's Tale or something, it's like you can't point out here's an annoying aspect of game design and then force you to do the annoying thing over and over again. Then it just becomes annoying rather than being funny. So it'll tell you can't just go into the assassination mission, and here's where you're forced to do this. You have to earn enough money. To earn enough money, you might have to do a job. So you have to go across town. There's a very shitty map, hard to read. You go across town. You go to the mission center. They give you a mission. Then you got to go across town on the map to find where you accept the mission.
Are the missions like fetch questy things, or are they like fighting people?
Might be like go to a beach and punch palm trees until coconuts fall down. Pick those up. Mash A as hard as you can to walk back to the table and drop it off. Go back and do this about 10 times, or to mow a lawn.
Wow.
And they're all like button mashing.
Pumping gas, really?
Yeah. So after you do this, you have money, and then it's like. Eventually, you get enough money to go into your thing, but instead of just going directly to the assassination mission, you have to go to an ATM. So then you drive across this boring-ass ghost town once more, go to an ATM, put your money in it, and then it's told that you have to go back to your hotel, where you get the phone call that tells you that you're now in the mission. So then, once more, you navigate this pointless. You're just trying to get back in and do something fun, right? And you're just connecting these dots in this bullshit city.
The barriers
to fun. And then you get back into your house, and then it's like, okay, you're open for the mission. So then you go to the mission. If you fucking fail in the mission, then you're back to the beginning where you have to go to accept the mission again and go to your hotel and then go back into the mission again.
Well, okay, so at least you don't have to go repeat the whole process.
So no more clearing off the coconuts over.
Inexplicable and I mean, there's indefensible
if you look back,
apparently it's punk though.
If you look back at how obtuse the design of Killer 7 was, I'm not surprised. I think that like Suda Goichi is as smart as he is and irreverent, like very fundamental gameplay flow things are lost on him.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I was trying to find some explanation for it all, and ultimately I said, they really just don't get it. They really think, I played a game before. I played like an hour of this game, and this is what they have you do, and people like that.
Well, and it kind of bums me out because
let's go do it, but totally missing the point of what made it entertaining.
It seems to me that he has something to say and something to offer games, something artistic and clever and different, and like he needs someone to help him with the gameplay. Really.
Absolutely. I mean, the superficially, stylistically, it's an interesting game, as was Killer 7.
Well, they've always had the stylistic part down. So the empty world, the repeated characters, did at any time did you ever have this inner troll that popped up and said, I wonder how much of this is by virtue of the power of the hardware?
I don't know. I don't think so, because I played games on last gen stuff like PS2 that
look at GTA.
Did a better job.
No, I know. I was just curious.
It has horrible pop-up and stuff, but I think they just aren't used to making a game of that scale. They just like went way beyond their abilities at that point.
It sounds like what you were describing to me. It sounds like it feels forced. It sounds like it's forcing you to go in and play around with this world that they built by making you trek back and forth through it and do these very mechanical.
Well, there's nothing to play in the
and there's nothing in the
between A and B. There's nothing in there, and so like the journey is supposed to be what it's about, right? And instead, it's just these destinations and
it could have been a menu. It could have been a menu.
It could have been a menu. Most of the game
with that description, it makes you sort of appreciate what Ueda-san and his team did with Shadow of the Colossus even more, because you remember when people like saw the trailers before the TGS and then at TGS, and there was a speculation like this could be the PlayStation 2 Zelda.
And it could have been. I still think it could have been if they wanted to make Zelda.
and then it really wasn't. Like, I mean, it's in between. It's really journeying, but it's not this other bullshit stuff that you're saying No More Heroes does. It's just really absorbing the world, finding where you're supposed to go through some semi-indirect means, and then getting there for this presentation. It ends up being something that's compelling other people more than this is compelling you.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I mean, Shadow of the Colossus, you really are just going from Colossus to Colossus. But when you're there, it's something you've never seen before, you've never experienced before. And it's just so epic that you almost forgive the gap. Where I feel like in No More Heroes, even when you get to the assassinations, it's not as fun as you were hoping.
I mean, it's cool to get to the boss of the end of the level. But the process of getting there so far isn't very cool. I mean, it's just very, very bland corridors, and I mean, there's some fun to it. The puzzling thing, I mean, the incredulity in my voice in all this is that I've looked at the responses online, and they're ecstatic. People love this.
I think it's divisive.
They're going crazy for it.
They're comparing it to Godard and stuff like that.
That is like upsetting to me, because I think it just shows how low people's standards. I think there's a lot of trash eaters out there, especially among video game fans. And I don't want to be like a snob when I say that, but like even the fact that I've seen so many people their motto is "Punk's not dead," and it's like to just sit there and repeat that. Like, okay, really now? You're not going to analyze that or think about that for a moment and do anything.
So you're not worried that you're going to be like the Time critic who gave Bonnie and Clyde a negative review, and then 6 months later had to come back and say, you know what? Actually, it was a classic.
Well, it's possible because I haven't finished it, so absolutely.
But I got the same hate for my Killer 7 review, and I think that the people just have already decided, they've made up their mind. And
you mean Killer 5.5?
I gave it a 6.5, but I think I appreciate what they're trying to do, but they need to try harder.
I think that maybe Killer 7 was more aligned. I mean, people were. The general consensus was that it was more disappointing from an actual sit down with the controller and through the actual play experience as opposed to the stylistic. I mean, everyone said the stylistic, the graphics of it, and the visuals and all that was cool.
Hearing
this one has more. This game has more people who are actively supporting the whole experience.
You're getting Wii fans. You're getting those people. People who are
even with the filter.
Desperate for an action game on Wii.
Oh, come on!
That's meant for someone
it's
above
not
the age
just
of
them,
8.
Though. You've got these bloggers. Some of them are sort of journalist bloggers. Others are developer bloggers. I know people who are associate producers who are raving about this game. It's not everyone, but
I would say even with the Wii filter that you're trying to say is out there, there's a definitely a solid group that says, you know what, they hit it right, and they got the combination of style and working game in this. And Sean obviously doesn't agree, and that's fine.
I think part of the other fans are the very same sort of person who the statement "Punk's not dead" made in 2008 would resonate with are the people that are going with it. I mean, like when you say the very fact of saying punk's not dead, when that was uttered meant punk was dead, right?
Right, of course.
And that like it was, largely 15 and 16-year-olds still looking for various identity packages and means to like
so maybe that clicks
establish who they are. And I think that's the same thing. So if you're trying to associate and build your identity based on your taste in video game and stuff, it's a good thing to latch onto in a way. And then it immediately caters to a large group of people by the main hero. His apartment building is just, it looks like a goon from Something Awful's, picture of his bedroom or something.
Well, he's like a super otaku.
It's loaded
action figures and
with
stuff.
like just shady ass pedo action figures, all that just like.
Well, and there's all these in jokes like meta, like old school RPG sound effects and shit going on, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. There's cool stylistic use of graphics and conventions from scoreboards from the dawn of arcade games and stuff, but. Part of the confusing part of the game, when you're saying it's impossible to tell if these things are deliberate or not, other people are saying, well, this is making fun of that sort of otaku, but I really don't think it is, because you look at the character, I think it's more like wish fulfillment. This is that guy who wanks in his room full of like those pedo dolls, and then he's like, at the same time, he stocks up on all these like
how about this? We're
Klingon
definitely
knives because he's preparing for when like the ethnics come into his Idaho enclave.
And in fact, like Sudogo Ichi, he's punk for games, but the idea of like taking a character from Planet Terror, that's not really punk.
How about this? Where Suda has succeeded is in opening this dialogue and getting people talking about this and getting us debating.
Controversial.
What else you play? You got anything else? Or are we moving on to the big
kick it on over
guy?
to N-Guy and just, if he wants to talk about both later, we both had some experience with Spore.
N-Guy plays something very special, apparently.
Well, I'm going to save that.
All right.
Best for last. But I have a bone to pick with your review crew. So you guys,
I don't know anything about it. It's not my review crew. I mean, well, it wasn't then.
Yes, hey, dude, it's yours, man. It's yours. Say it.
Own up, Garnet.
Own
up. You're the sensei of reviews now, and they gave the club a really low score. And I think lower than deserved. So first thing, how many people here downloaded the demo on either 360 or
Andrew Pfister raised his hand.
I played it at E3.
So you're not on the mic. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down.
It's a thumbs sideways.
My argument is it'd be a great PSN or Xbox Live Arcade game.
Okay.
I've seen a couple demos. I wasn't that impressed.
I see. I'm on Brian's camp there. As I saw a couple demos, and just the whole thing fell flat on me. I was like, okay, so it's like Running Man the shooter.
I was like,
don't know.
I'm like, do they have a Geometry Wars download in there?
It felt to me like a game from 1995. Not the way it looked, just the way it was designed, or something. I don't know. Just not a modern game at all.
Take me to task.
So I actually think the gameplay is special.
By the way, I absolutely abhor that word. What do you mean? What do you mean the gameplay? What about it?
What about the gameplay? I'm going to get into it.
I'm going to watch to see if any of your
break it
reviews
down.
have gameplay written in them now on.
So, dude, I'm tigering for that word. I hate that word. It means nothing. Think about it. Just let me go on my soapbox for a minute. I fucking hate that word.
Garnet, it means everything. Continue, Ninga.
So,
and nothing.
What I like about it is, so what is the game? The fiction is kind of like this Fight Club overlay. You have these characters that could be straight out of a fighting game. It's a shooter in terms of basic mechanics, but then it's also got these aspects of racing games in it because, you're either on the clock and you're starting trying to get continues. It's a score attack game, right? So you're trying to sort of get continues and keep going. You've got a sprint button, to sort of race through the levels as fast as you can. And so the whole thing is about chaining kills. Right, so the more kills you chain, the more your multiplier goes up. But in between kills, it starts ticking down, and so you've got to keep getting kills or keep shooting these icons, these sort of sign-looking things that are diamond-shaped signs that are present in the environment to keep your combo going to get the highest score possible. And I felt that combination, like usually shooters, I mean, even sort of. It goes back to sort of, Serious Sam or even like how Doom used to be really fast-paced and stuff like that, but sort of giving it this like score attack filter, which you had arcade mode in Call of Duty 4 and in Halo, but like I just kind of felt like that pressure, that running from point to point, guy to guy, trying to take these people out as fast as possible, that felt really good. And like where it felt especially good was when you were on the circuit ones. Like, there's I forget what they call the mode, but basically you're doing a loop like three times. In a smaller area, through whether it's a prison or this like boat or a war zone. And you sort of realize that you never see that in games. And usually, like when you're in a shooter, you're sort of going from point A to point B. And multiplayer, you might sort of do circuits, but to do this in like single player, there's just something about it, like that knowing where the guys are going to pop up, keeping trying to get it. So it's a bit like almost on rails.
See,
like I found
one of my arguments is I think the game would be better on rails because like when it's kind of on rails, then when you are forced to like pick away, you're kind of taken out of it because you're like, oh, I need to keep my thing going, and like it almost be better if it was on rails. And my other thing is, did you ever play the Mercenaries mode in Resident Evil 4? A mode that is basically the club, which is an unlockable in a much better game than the club.
Yeah, did it have a sprint button?
Wait,
no, but it's very similar.
Did it have a sprint button? Wait, that's your whole argument?
No.
I played 2 levels of the club, and I was like, wow, this reminds me of the Mercenaries, and I can't imagine spending $60 on this game ever.
The sprint button matters. The clock matters. Like all of those elements, like it's this mix of elements, and really,
all right. So
let me finish. It's actually very similar to the other games that Bizarre has made. I mean, this is like Geometry Wars
in
a 3D environment. It's like the game Sega never made. Now it's not perfect, but the gameplay, like I actually think they were like 80 to 90% of the way to something really awesome and really fun. The demo, unfortunately, because it only gives you like a point to point, so running to the end, and then one of the laps, it doesn't give you enough of a sense. If I were them, I would have given you like an entire like location to finish.
But so you feel in this era, in this age, this game warrants its price tag as a full price box product in the age of Call of Duty 4 and Grand Theft Auto 4 and games like that.
On gameplay, yes.
See, so now you're using here's another thing about gameplay here's why it bothers me, because I'm going to ask you a question about what other people would call gameplays. You're waxing very like enthusiastically about the way the game goes together, the way the level structure works, the way it pulls you in, the way it gets your adrenaline going, all those sorts of things. That's cool. It's a shooter. Fundamentally, do the shooting controls work?
The shooting control,
the control is great.
The controls are good.
Because everybody I've talked to is like, man, the aiming in this is horrible.
It's different. I mean, it's not like a regular first-person shooter, but I just think the concept is really solid. But they misused it by making a full box game. Like the same thing with worse graphics as a download game for $14.95 would have been huge. I think.
And one person actually described this to me as the same aiming and control system as Kane and Lynch.
I'd say it's better. It works. I will say that there is a button to sort of like flip yourself, so like turn it 180 degrees, and it's. I always want, whenever that's done, I want it to sort of like be a camera, like almost slow it down, like so I don't lose my orientation.
Right.
This flip is confusing. What I will say is that so while the gameplay I feel is like as good and certainly more inspired than a lot of games that basically just sort of standard mechanics.
It is something different.
It is different and it is inspired. I did criticize them in my next Edge column for what is missing and what their other games have, particularly Geometry Wars, is the atmosphere. Like, they don't really sell you on the club stuff. It's you don't want a story so much, but it's really perfunctory.
Yeah, like the
Project Gotham has no atmosphere. But it's got the kudos.
The characters are laughable, man.
Yeah, the characters
are like warehouses.
I think that's what happened when I saw them. I was like, I don't want to play these guys.
Like I said,
they look ridiculous.
I did make the analogy to fighting games, and then the ragdolls are not very compelling. The gun sounds are not very explosive. There are some things you can trigger explosions in the environment and stuff like that, but like, I wanted to sell that whole thing like a Burnout, like a Black, like to really be kinetic, so you really feel badass while you're doing it.
Think about, how things work in Crackdown when you have full power, aside from the athleticism and stuff, but when you're like basically juggling someone with rockets and whatnot. Now, what if it had that? Or what if the characters were not only superficially like fighting game characters, but they were in their available options and weapons and loadouts and powers.
It needed some things along like that, and that's like why, unfortunately, I don't think the game is going to do well enough. But it's a kind of game.
I think it'll be a colossal failure.
Yeah, it's gonna be a flop.
I think it's gonna be a weird footnote because now that Bizarre was bought, like in 5 years, it'll be like, remember the club from Sega? What the fuck was that?
Right. And so I'm just because I feel like if they were able to do a club 2. Like,
which they won't.
People would love it and get it. Like, they would nail it. I think they would get it right.
How much of your enthusiasm here is because of being intrigued by what they were doing with the arenas and getting you drawn into that, and how much of it is genuinely generated by what the game does when you're actually playing it?
It's purely the visceral response to the game.
It has gotten some really good scores, especially in Europe, especially.
Yeah. Well,
does it have co-op?
Visceral. It has multiplayer.
Okay, which I
didn't.
What
which I haven't played yet.
Sounds like more fun when you're competing with someone. Imagine too, like I'm thinking of adding the powers and the characters. Like if one of you have a fast forward time and a rewind time button, and you're each taking turns. Like say you launch someone up in the air, someone fast forwards, someone rewinds, and you get some. It's basically like messing with like a YouTube clip, but in real time with some ragdoll with another friend.
So with everything else that's on my plate, would you recommend that I actually put the club in and try it out or not?
You should try it.
Absolutely,
I think,
absolutely. And hopefully, if it does flop, hopefully Sega does release it as a download because I think people should experience it and they might be able to do more. Obviously for less.
Now,
but we'll see.
Isn't it rumored that Bazaar is going to make the Bond game for Activision?
It is rumored that they're going to make the Bond game.
So does that make you?
I asked Bobby Kotick last week or this week, a couple days ago.
confirm?
He wouldn't answer it.
So if they do, are you more like excited now that they'll be making it after playing the club, or?
Well, it shouldn't be exactly like the club, but I think they can do it.
Well, I think they're the best development team that would be on it for a long time.
And hopefully they do it on COD4 Tech. So to bring things home, the other game that I played was I visited Insomniac, and I played a single map from the co-op mode of Resistance 2.
Whoa.
Cool.
Why are you guys
And
so
the world
excited?
just
I have
came
to
to a
stay- I
stop.
have to
Hold on,
step
I'm
in,
floating
not
in
to
the air.
troll. Okay, while your world's coming to a stop, Resistance for me was like an absolutely mediocre game that
Really?
was overrated because it was a launch software for the PlayStation 3.
So what about it made it so?
The design of it, the way it worked, it was entirely run of the mill. I mean, it wasn't ridiculously bad or anything, but it was like the way that each level was constructed, the way it was paced, the objectives in it. I mean, nothing stood out. I mean, there's so many more games, so many other FPSs that single player experiences I thought were better, significantly better than it.
So did you enjoy any of it? Is there anything I can latch onto here? Or should I just move on?
I mean, no,
Well,
you could just
whatever.
move on.
Let's
I'm just
just-
saying,
I wanna hear what
I'm
he thought about
questioning
Resistance
in the
Right.
way that you guys are questioning the sincerity of people who like really, even though I was too, the people who really, really love No More Heroes. And Shane said that they liked it because they they got a system for 8-year-olds and they're finally happy to have something that's for someone older. In this case, I'm just saying, I think a lot of the outside of the multiplayer, which I haven't played because the single player was so uninteresting to me. And there's all these other multiplayer shooters I was wrapped up in at the time. I was just questioning that hype is largely built on the fact that Resistance became its own legend because it was launch software.
Seems to me, Sean, I mean, you can look back at the reviews. I think Resistance was pretty accurately rated. It got 8s. I mean, it wasn't like Perfect Dark Zero, which got 9s.
It's a really, really high
Or
score.
Halo that got 10s.
And I use it differently than them.
But you
like,
never-
I think
but you did-
Crysis
but you never
is
even played
far better.
All right,
But you
so
also didn't
than
play
Resistance,
multiplayer.
and
You
I
also
gave it
never
an 8.
played multiplayer
Time out.
on Resistance. You never.
Guy played Resistance 2. Let's hear about it.
Yeah.
All right. So they gave you the whole presentation on the game, what
Nice.
they were trying to do with it, and it's just go read what Game Informer wrote because it's the same presentation.
All right.
They even had Game Informer's name at the bottom of the opening deck. So it was the presentation that they gave to them. The multiplayer, they were very insistent, saying, hey, you got to realize this is basically being built on R1 sort of tech right now. You know what I'm saying? That's what they're showing. So it definitely, for the most part, looked like R1. However, there were a couple of elements that were starting to look very much like R2 and like in very cool ways. So there were these, I forget what about a third of the way through the game, you get to your first set of like those big characters. I don't know what they're called quite, like not Goliaths or something else in the game. But you remember like the first
Walkers?
No, the tall guys.
not the walkers,
The tall
but
guys that you overheat.
they look like trolls basically.
Yeah, the big tall guys with the serious like hardened black pants and no shirt, and you got to overheat them to get them down. And yeah.
No, but big.
Big
I mean, like
dudes.
trolls.
They're like like
they
18
look
foot tall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those guys. And in this one, they had armor that looked like really good, like very reflective and specular and all those buzzwords you'd want. But they had this electrical sort of field going off them and around them that it's probably going to look even better when it's actually done. But that was sort of the thing that looked the most R2. But basically, the maps are big for co-op, and there's still a lot of refinement that they're working on and need to do. It was really much more to sort of get a sense of the scale and scope of what they were doing. But just on a basic level, like it felt fun sort of being with your guys and running around doing it. I was playing a medic, which I get the impression, because one of the PR people had also played medic the day before, and I think that's what they let visitors play for now. But what they did say is they do have, for the game, they have the overall skeleton. The game is entirely roughed out, so single player is entirely roughed out, and now they're going in and refining what they've done. And then multiplayer, they're already playing it between Burbank, where Insomniac is, and Foster City, where Sony HQ is.
Good.
And so they're going through that, and everyone has to play the game the multiplayer at least twice a week. So they're definitely banging on it, trying to get it right. So I would say, like, at this earliest level, it was more sort of organized chaos. I'm saying, like, you get through one set of guys, and then like another set sort of come through, but it was already starting to feel like the makings of something good. And to your point, Sean, what you were saying about the first Resistance, the way I described it was meat and potatoes. I felt like it was a meat and potatoes shooter, and I didn't see any single player, so I can't say what single player is going to be like on this. But based on what I played, I think they have the makings of something fun. I want to start to see like more explicit tactics that they're going to, like the way weapons might work together and sort of call things out. Because I think on console games, a little more than PC games, you need to have that sort of like, you sort of guide people to those moments, and they say they're going to have that. The thing I wish that I could talk about, and unfortunately they told me off the record, my big question when I went in is, so 60-player multiplayer, that sounds like something you check off on the back of the box. That sounds like e-penis. You know what I'm saying?
It is. It is.
And their whole thing.
I know this from Battlefield.
Exactly. So their whole thing, I remember talking to the Quake Wars guys and, sort of saying, like, look, I mean, like, what do you guys find is sort of optimal? And then people say, look, it ends up being sort of 8 to 16 ultimately. Competitive stuff tends to be like 5-on-5 and things like that. And so I said to them, like, I mean, I'm sort of skeptical. What are you guys doing with this? And I wish I could say what they told me. But they told me one thing that they're doing.
All right.
And if the rest of the stuff they're thinking is along those lines, because their overall thing, which I can say, is they want it to be large scale but also intimate. They want you to have a sense that you're getting to know both the people on your team and the guys that you're fighting against. And the one thing they told me, if they start doing stuff and more stuff along those lines, they have a shot of actually doing something special and engaging on that scale. A shot.
On that point, I can't wait to hear what it is, because I know it's a very difficult design challenge. I mean, like Battlefield, what they attempted to leverage Commander as one way of doing that. Squads in which you're able to spawn on squad leaders. I mean, various solutions have been proposed, and it will work. It will work fairly well with clan play, where everyone's agreeing to coordinate and this and that. But otherwise, the issue is how you're scattering the players all over the map, and they're fighting, sporadically here and there, using vehicles, and just losing that sense of coordination. And it's like you were saying with like Quake Wars, you bring it down to a certain level, and you get back to the point where every vehicle is really important.
It's almost
all
like
I gotta say is, for you especially, I wish I could tell you, but
it must be good. I'm sure.
Based on what you're saying,
I have a question
you would
for
be like,
Ray.
you would be intrigued. You'd be like, okay, I'm still skeptical, but I'm going to give them a shot.
Okay, now you're one of the only people who's played Resistance 2 and Killzone 2.
Yeah, that's that was where I was going to go.
So what are you more excited about now after playing both?
Look, it's a bit unfair because Killzone 2, I played single player. Resistance 2, it was co-op. Killzone 2 looked polished. R2 didn't.
And at the hour and 5-minute mark, the answer is...
You have to pick one. Go.
Killzistance 3.
I would say, for me, Guerrilla has more to prove. So I'm more curious to see if they can maintain that level. I mean, because here's the thing. At the end of the day, regardless of what you think of Insomniac, they're going to ship on time, and it's going to be at the very least solid, maybe really good. Guerrilla has yet to, on console, ship, at that level. And I'm curious to see if they can stick it.
And they've absolutely benefited, again, from being, PlayStation only at the time and being presented as an answer to Halo. I mean, that game was not very good either. And suddenly now Killzone 2 is among the most anticipated games when there's like really... I mean, I'm not saying... maybe they'll pull off a coup and it'll be incredible. But it's like, so far, like you're saying, judging from the track record and what we know of this company and their previous work, there's nothing to make you think that this is going to be a Halo 3 killer or whatever.
Right. What environment was it in?
Forget Halo 3. What
can
about
you talk about that?
2 killer?
It was a wintry sort of environment that seemed,
generic.
It was Chimeran architecture.
Okay. So you're someplace that the aliens or whatever they are had taken over and then
exactly.
But
there is going to be a story that ties together the co-op, and but when I sat down to play it, they didn't explain how this tied in.
Okay. And can you talk about any new toys that you got to play with at all?
No, they didn't. They didn't show any new weapons. So the medic gun, which I'm pretty sure I can talk about, is
I think I talked about in the Game Informer story.
Yeah. So the medic gun, it's the same shot. He kills, damages enemies, heals friends,
Right.
And then the alternate fires to heal yourself.
Cool.
And I thought it was like a nice, simple, very console mechanic.
There's
Worked
a
well.
Saber. It's a 50s era jet in one of the Game Informer screenshots. That would be cool in multiplayer.
It'd be awesome.
So how was it?
Bringing the jet.
Third person or first person?
Didn't see it.
He shall not tell. All right, that's N-Guy wrapping up with Resistance 2. That's a bombshell, dude. That's a hella good bombshell,
Wouldn't
man.
it be nice to play games like that?
It would be nice to play games like that. I'm telling
Had
you.
to bring something for the kids.
Dude, you guys. Oh,
Katanwi, we love you.
I
There
don't
you
wanna, go. Garnet's like, dude, what are you going to say now? But seriously,
No,
I'm
I'm cool. I mean,
like we're game journalists, and we've been doing this for a while. Actually, I use that word when I'm more fond of using professional enthusiasts. But either way, we've been doing this for a long time. Are used to having early, often exclusive access to games to the point where I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. Do you guys? You're really this way? You're like, oh god, this guy's so lucky. Just wring your hands. It would be nice to. It would be nice.
One thing you will get to know as you spend more time with me is I actually am 12. I actually
I
am
don't know,
12.
Sean, when I'm the first person who gets to play something, it's still a big deal to me.
Yeah,
I'm like a 12-year-old.
It is to me.
like the neener type thing.
No, not like
Just
that.
like
not like
a
just
glimpse,
like it's like
just
kind
a
of
glimpse
cool.
behind the scenes to see something
Yeah.
that's really not done and what it's like to
Yeah.
make a game, and I don't know, it's exciting.
When that stops getting me excited, then
It's something time to change jobs.
yeah, maybe it might be. I don't know.
Sean
I
Elliott, jaded.
Well, I'm excited to see the game.
Not jaded, just different.
No,
I'm
like
excited
you
to
said,
see
I'm
the
excited
games,
to see
but
the
it's
game,
like
it's not like
it's not like
I can see it, you don't.
So-
like none of that stuff.
well, it's like I know it's going to come, and I know the time will come when I get to see it, so I can wait, and it's still in development. I'm just saying
right.
There's so many games we have to follow. I can't be that excited about every single one.
We got
Yes, you
two
do.
more segments, fellas, to get out of the way here. So let's take a quick break. When we come back on the other side, we'll do a couple of community threads, a little GDC quick prep, and we're going to talk about the cult of developers becoming celebrities. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Killer apps, useful utilities, quirky undiscovered websites, brilliant life-changing software. You'll find it on appscout.com from the editors of PC Magazine. Remember, your hardware is only as good as the apps running on it. appscout.com, stalking the killer app.
All right, we're back and ready to get rolling. Hope everybody out there in the community had an excellent Valentine's Day yesterday with their significant other. In honor of that, we bring back a time-honored tradition of a beige thread.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
Andrew's shocked. And as was pointed out inside the beige thread, it's a good thing that he knows how to use the bold tag because really it's very difficult to read through his old threads. Beige, we love you, baby. It's all good. He brought out in honor of Valentine's Day, talking about love in games. So long story short, he postulated to us who got it right, and more importantly, let's talk about who got it wrong and why. And finally, make a suggestion about how you'd want the developer to sell their game's love angle to you. Some quick takes from the community. Angry Jedi thought this was an interesting topic. So there were some recurring titles that came up in this discussion. One of them would be Final Fantasy VIII. I think that's a pretty much consensus agreement, right?
Yeah, I think it was they tried kind of a similar thing to what they did in 7, but took it further with Renoa and Squall, and also like the love triangle with what's his face, Laguna and his chick. Yeah, it was well done. You know, the gameplay kind of sucks, but good story.
But what Angry Jedi pointed out, and it probably put this in the most concise way, is that the love story took precedence over the usual saving the world angle of Final Fantasy games, right? The other one that Angry Jedi brought out is Silent Hill 2, which Gamasutra rightly mentioned, and went on to say that Silent Hill 2's story is not about the monsters or the town's descent into hell. It's about James, his love for his dead wife, and his own personal revelations about his relationship with her.
Yeah, but I think that's a pretty fucked up thing to point out on Valentine's Day, really. If you played through that game and know what he did to his wife and shit, not so.
He had to.
Yeah, that's pretty fucked up.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm just pointing out that was the.
That's for the goths. That's for the goths.
How about
on
this?
Valentine's Day.
We started the thread because of Valentine's Day, which was
Right.
yesterday. But I think that Silent Hill 2 was a great observation because that's a serious treatment of.
Right, but if I was thinking of like romantic games, not the top of my list.
Did Shadow of the Colossus or Eco come up?
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Well,
Just saying.
Eco and Shadow of the Colossus came up several times, and we're going to get to that as the
Shadow of the Colossus,
as
him and his horse.
Hold on, we're going to go to the final one more real quick with that. Hillett brought up Indigo Prophecy, and specifically the international version, which did not have the edited sex scene, wherein you used the analog sticks to simulate the thrusting motions of one and guys.
I didn't even
guys
know
really
that.
said.
Did you
By
know
the
that,
way,
Shane?
Hillett
Wow.
Hillett might need to go back and look at the definition between love and sex.
But I mean, look. I mean, who am I to roll my eyes when that's pretty much what they do in the God of War games? I mean, I'm assuming everyone here saw the
Right.
sex scene from the God of War PSP game, but there it's. I mean, Kratos is kind of like that guy. I mean, he's like Conan. You know what I'm saying?
You expect it from him.
He rolls up in the tent, bangs the hot chick. She turns out to be old, but at least he hit it when she was young, and then raised up. I mean, that's like Kratos. You know what I'm saying? And so, in a weird way, like those button combinations and whatnot, and they're sort of going for. It's in a way, it's like low comedy, right? It's not erotic, and it works. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like heavy metal TNA kind of thing, but if you're trying to do a more serious treatment, and that's like why I would give props to Casey and the doctors at BioWare for some of the stuff they did in Mass Effect. And I think
for the sex box.
Yeah, because I think that using dialogue mechanics as a way to drive sex scenes, intimate scenes, and things like that, even though ultimately you're still hitting buttons, I think is like a better metaphor than just sort of like twiddling sticks and like stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
So there
like,
you go, ladies. The way to end guys' pants is through the words.
I don't know. There's like very few games have handled it well, but the ones that do are incredible. Like Second Life, where I met your moms. But no, I had to bring up before we move on. The next thing I had to bring up Half-Life 2 and the way that Alex, even though it's not an obvious like. It hasn't come to anything, but that's why it's working, is because they're being so subtle and taking their time with it.
What about the PC fantasy RPGs, especially the European ones like Gothic 2, Gothic 3,
Witcher.
and
There's
The
The Witcher. I don't know. I haven't played
those?
it, but I don't know if it sounds like love. That sounds more like tapping.
But like,
to me.
Right.
But
Button
I'd say like
wait, did you say fapping?
But I said tapping.
Okay.
But I would
Just wanna
say,
make sure
like,
I got it right.
Fapping and button
like
tapping.
a traditionally romantic love story is at the heart of many JRPGs. Like a lot of them, it's very. I'd say
it is.
if you're looking for a romantic lovey-dovey love, JRPG is the way to go.
And I mean, absolutely, Yakuza has this totally classic tragedy of love in it as well, and unrequited love, and the things people do for love, even when it's not returned.
Although, Garnet, what you give the Hostess Club, that's not really love. You're paying for that.
I actually didn't play the Hostess Club stuff.
When did you say also Metal Gear Solid 3?
Wait,
is
that sounds
Yeah,
like-
Metal Gear Solid 3 is the love story.
Yeah,
Wait
it is
a
love
second.
story.
Oh.
It's it's like the mother love.
Good choice, Brian.
That is a good
I knew
choice.
we had you here for a reason.
Also, Facade's worth a mention, even though it's like a relationship that's falling apart. Facade is basically this game where you knock on a door and it turns out it's this couple and they invite you in. They've called
It's more
you
like a
over or
storytelling
something.
game, right? It wasn't
And
like a traditional game.
it's basically like procedural dialogue.
Yeah.
You talk with them and do different things.
It's called.
If you want,
It's
you can,
basically IF, interactive fiction.
right.
Yeah.
And it's actually pretty interesting, though. I mean, you see some.
Shane's stunning me with games that he knows about
There's
out
the-
of
sorry.
nowhere.
There's The Marriage by Rod Humble.
Yeah,
I haven't
the
heard
game
that
with
one.
I've heard
the-
of that.
The squares, sort of like the pink square and the blue square going larger and smaller, and it's like figuring out like both the need for solitude and the need for connection, things like that. But I was going to say, since Shane mentioned the Hostess Bar and that's not Hostess Club, and that's not really love, Garnet, why don't you just quickly, because I know we're time constrained, share your latest Valleywag obsession?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Like, for some reason, Valleywag over the last couple of weeks has had story after story about the sexual activity of VC guys and where they spend their money on call girls and full-time mistresses and escorts.
Like venture capital investor people?
Well, just like all the people around Silicon Valley.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, there's this website called it's Redbook. Is that what it is? I think it's Redbook, where it's basically the Yelp of call girls.
Of like high-class hookers?
Yeah, the Yelp of high-class hookers. You go check them out.
What's that
Check out
URL?
the reviews. All you got to do, man, is go
Wow,
to
Zip's paying like that?
Not really.
go to Valleywag, and I'm sure it's all over the place. Anyway, yeah, it's really silly, isn't that? It's kind of funny. It's really funny. And then, of course, the story I was showing you today was that the mistresses are upset that their old boyfriends are getting into Viagra because they're keeping them up all night and making them late for class in the morning. Anyway, Panther XX, of course, brought it home with Eco, and there were many posts who pointed to Eco, and I think that what Panther XX got is how difficult it is to put into words what exactly about Eco works, because it doesn't have dialogue.
It's not hard.
It's very similar to Half-Life. It's just the proximity and the duration, although Alex is like an empowered version of the female. It's just time and
it's not hard. I got 2 words for you. Inverse kinematics.
She pulls. When you pull her, she pulls back.
I hate to reduce it to tech, and I'm obviously being slightly facetious, but that's what sells it.
That little thing, yeah. When you pull and she pulls the other way, that's big.
That whole thing of this like little kid being chivalrous. And like, and obviously there's more to it because, I love the way they sort of explain away the AI pathfinding, right? So she's blind, right? Which is like why she might sort of stumble about when she's trying to get to you. But that whole thing of like calling to her across a chasm, she jumps, doesn't quite make the jump, you grab her hand and sort of pull her up, sort of like, bringing her along lightly, or if you push hard on the analog stick and you're running, like yanking her along and like all that stuff. It really creates this connection, like these little moments. And I think that goes back to what you were saying about the way you want to be told stories in games is in game and not so much the cutscenes. And like, if you can tell it, like use everything at your disposal, whether it's the animation, whether it's the voiceover, whether it's it's what I call embedded narrative, what they do a lot of in Portal. What I'm saying, like the things that are inscribed on the walls and stuff like that. It gives you room for imagination. I mean, if you think about visual media, I remember being a kid, and we didn't go to the movies a lot, so I was like that kid who would check the novelization out at the library so I could read about the movies that I wasn't getting to go see. And then like when I finally saw them, I'd be like, and you guys know, like, novelizations are horrible. But I was like, I imagined it better in my head the way they did it on screen. And, TV and movies and games, they don't leave a lot of room for imagination. It's more interpretation. But I feel like Portal and even Eco and Shadow of the Colossus, like, where they don't force narrative interpretation on you, but leave you room to sort of explore it. I think they sort of activate your imagination in a way.
And just delighting in the discovery that you basically created it or found it yourself. And there's so much more room for things to be done. I mean, I want a game where instead of a cutscene showing me something about a character, you basically go into their room. You go, I mean, this is going to sound scary. I mean, this is just conceptual.
And then you go through their package.
But you can go through their drawers.
True stalker mentality.
And then maybe like you put in, maybe there's like a videotape or an audio tape, and then you stick that in the VCR, and then you play that, and that's playing in the background, and there's some information or component of that person's character there. There's more contained on, I mean, just the objects on the walls and stuff like that. I mean, that's exactly what you're saying. I mean, it goes back to just the fact that both, I think, the duration and the proximity being the character, but also the physicality that it's communicated and the way that the graphics engine handles it is infinitely better than if they showed a cutscene of them hugging and crying and every time they made a close escape or something like that.
Just as a little aside, and Guy, I'm curious, did you hear anything about like Trico, the new game from those guys at DICE? Because I've heard a few little things. I'm curious if you heard anything.
No, I mean, I guess.
The rumors have been going that they have that image, trying to get new people to join the team in Japan, right. And as we've been hearing scuttlebutt that before E3 you'll see it and that it'll make you cry. That's what I heard.
That would be pretty awesome.
That's what I heard.
Wow. The second thread I'm going to bring out here for you is by Liquid Hokage. That would be the seeming lack of quality storytelling in games. Is it the fault of script or the fault of gamers? He brings up in last week's One Up Yours, Garnet's brought up how a story in a game equates to a $3 novel. I disagree. I think that we focus too much on the games that do a miserable job at storytelling. I think we praise games that tell passable, hackneyed stories, and that we ignore games that push the envelope, meaning games that make you care for characters without overly using dialogue, or games that are dialogue heavy but are deep enough to leave room for interpretation. Yes, that was why I brought this one up, right? So the final boss fight in MGS3 was brought up in last week's One Up Yours, the scene in which the boss is killed in the end of MGS3, and after she dies, the color of the field of flowers immediately changes. It was art
to red.
Brilliant.
That boss battle is horrible, though.
It's CQC, dude. It's easy.
Yeah.
No, because it's the whole. My experience of it, maybe I did it wrong. Was You get shot a whole bunch, pause, stitch up, do this mini game and click, 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 shoot her, run around, get shot again, go back to the menu, click, 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 shoot her, go, just wash and repeat over and over again. And then I heard all these people, it was like the best boss battle ever.
There are completely other strategies you can use to beat her.
Here's the thing. So 2 things. One is the end, obviously the best boss battle in the game and one of the best of all time. But 2, did anyone replay the game all the way through in the, what do they call it, subsistence
camera?
Yeah.
It's much easier.
Was it better with the new camera?
It's easier.
No, the thing is, the rest of the game, aside from the boss fights, is better. Because, you're basically, the camera becomes a real big problem when you're just going from, point A to point B, you're crossing the bridge.
Right.
Because you can finally see the 3 guys who are 2 walking across, 1 in the distance. But for the boss fights, it doesn't,
it makes some of them easier.
Making some of them easier, but I didn't break it or anything like that.
That's what I'm really curious to see, when he has a game designed around a proper modern camera system, and bosses designed around that. It'll be really interesting to see what he does. But anyway, that color shift was amazing, and isn't that kind of in a way? I'm not saying that's where they took it, but that's a big part of the core of Sabotage. Or
that's true.
Saboteur.
And I think MGS3 does narrative right on every single level, actually. So there you go.
All right, so Gamer for Life lays the blame on
every level.
The obvious
you get yourself No More Heroes then. It's for that same.
Sean, if you really think Metal Gear Solid 3 has a poor story,
I don't think it's poor, but I don't think it's. You're saying it does right on every single level.
I think it has amazing cutscenes, amazing emerging things happening, and
Sean doesn't like cutscenes.
The writing, the voice acting.
I think I've said it before on the show.
The optional things that flesh it out.
I grandfather in Metal Gear. I do overall agree with you. The game
grandfathered in what regard?
In the sense that I wouldn't want every game to have long cutscenes.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
And it doesn't work for most, but I think, and
it's
he gets away.
Shtick. It's their shtick.
It's their shtick, but I feel like also there's a purpose in the sense that what are the cutscenes? And look, anyone who says they get tedious or boring or seen it before, done it, I get it. But it's Socratic dialogues between soldiers on the battlefield. And that's what they are. And, it's they'll start out talking, then they'll go into sort of a near documentary presentation of things that happened, and then they'll come back in and they're talking. But the challenge is that creating deep storytelling that's akin to the kind of storytelling you get in other media through what Sean and I are responding to, which is stuff that's more both emergent and embedded storytelling. You can't. It's harder to do it with the precision that you can in the way Metal Gear does, which they take their time. They'll take 10 minutes to do a cutscene, and what that means is that when you get to the end, and the reason that fight with the boss and the whole thing with her dying is because you got her narrative in that way. It's a different way of moving people. And the challenge is to figure out, is there a way to do that kind of storytelling or get the kind of emotion that comes out of that storytelling in-game? I don't know if you can, but I feel like while Sean is right overall, I give Metal Gear a pass.
I'll have to play that again because it's not only that, judging it on its own merits and its own sort of narrative devices. I thought that the story was what I was seeing was fairly ludicrous. Was the deal?
Well, of course.
So I'll have to go back.
There are
absolutely.
Yeah, there are elements of Metal Gear that are completely ludicrous,
absurd.
But you were saying it was basically great in every way.
No, I really think that. I think you can look at different Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3 under different lenses, and they're all pretty unique. But I really think MGS3 is a very self-contained, well-told story that is emotionally moving and gripping, and I really had no problems with it.
All right, let's move on a little bit.
I'll just say it's ludicrous, but it's not just ludicrous.
Okay.
All right, let's move on a little bit. Gamer for Life, first of all, said it was a great topic, wanted to lay the blame on both doorsteps, but started off by saying that when gamers start complaining that story cutscenes are too long, which is why I wanted to bring this point in here, developers take notice and try to change it. But then there are those developers who don't care about story at all and throw something crappy out there and people flock to it and buy it because the game play is great. Gears of War, anyone? No one's considering and argue Gears of War has got some kind of great story or narrative to it.
It's just fairly. I don't think we're all quiet because it's what's the point?
Well,
gameplay makes video games.
No,
video games
but the
about
weird thing about Gears of War is they did hire a professional writer to write that story that everyone poo-poos.
Yeah, but if you talk to people who talk to people who talk to people who talk to her, to Susan O'Connor,
yeah,
the buzz is that they held her back from doing what she's good at.
Surprise! Who would have figured that out?
Beneath it, you could see that the whole thing that was this. They wanted to do this metaphor for that would be ambivalent. That would work for the current situation in Iraq. That would work along in the same way that like Namor the Submariner story works. All the Namor fans out there that should register. We're just. We're the aggressors,
Well, okay, so Sean, I have a question for you. For something that sort of falls in the middle between just embedded storytelling and like long Kojima-less cutscenes, what do you think of the cutscenes in Rockstar's games, particularly Grand Theft Auto, the Grand Theft Auto games?
It's been a while since I played. I mean, and I've played all of them up through San Andreas, but I don't know. I like them there more.
I think they are the best at doing efficient cutscenes. See, what happens a lot of times is either it's like Goldilocks. The cutscenes are either too short and they're perfunctory, or they're too long and you're just kind of your eyes are rolling. They do a really good job of like making it efficient, but not so efficient that it's like it's just like I didn't get anything, but long enough so you get character out of them.
But this is developing sophistication in the writing skills of the people who are scripting these stories and putting together the narrative element of the games, right? I mean, that's what this is what it's all about, which is interesting because Nostradamus also took a very academic approach to this question and said that I'm at odds at what actually defines a good story. I think stories within games are underrated. Mass Effect and Assassin's Creed told great stories, considering you don't really need to have a firm grasp on what's going on to have fun with a game. I think people put less emphasis on...
That's what makes a great story when you don't have to understand it.
I think people put less emphasis on understanding the story, and thus developers put less emphasis on creating a compelling narrative.
It's utterances, man. That kid's babbling.
I don't know.
Babylon, you vagabond.
I think that's actually a pretty good point. If we're willing, as the people who look at games, to get completely caught up in, well, Assassin's Creed only repeated the same game mechanic over and over and over, isn't that telling the developer, by the way, all we're caring about is the mechanic of the game?
From what I know of Assassin's Creed, I haven't finished it, but like the twist, I know the twist. I think that is kind of clever and creative and ballsy, and they did something different. And a game that I just reviewed, Lost Odyssey, we big debate about how that story is given to you, because the best story in that game are short stories you read, like a lot of them, and you just read them, and everyone's like, oh, these are the best. That's the best part of the game, these short stories. And I called it a misuse of the medium, because I don't care how good that story is. It's not. This is a game, dude.
Right.
Some way integrate this into the game.
That's how
like
I feel.
As I said, if you put a copy of Moby Dick in the box of the game, do I add 2 points to the score of the game? No.
Or Left Behind came with Left Behind.
Oh, Jesus.
In this guy's specific instance, though, the message I think would be to the developer is that if no one's talking about your story, that you failed in your story, not that you shouldn't bother with the story in the first place. Look at Portal, on the other hand. It was a game that's a puzzle game. They threw in a story, and everyone's talking about it. Then the lesson goes the opposite direction there. Hey, people really like that. They responded well to it, So it's like I don't know about the guy has to worry because no one felt quite the same as he did about Assassin's Creed narrative, that he's never going to see another.
Right.
Law Dog has also been playing Lost Odyssey and brought up that so with the disclaimer, this is just into the first hour so far, wanted to bring up the storytelling techniques as a part of how well the story comes across to you, and pointed out the first one they wanted to talk about was when the game switches from fixed camera to third person in the dream sequences.
There's no camera in the dream sequence. The dream sequences are those short stories you read. There's no camera. It's text.
Interesting. Okay, so maybe he's missing
I think
something
he's confused.
There. All right, and then also talking about the split screens and how.
Oh, okay. I think he's talking about a flashback really early where Kyle, he's having a dream and he sees himself in it. It's a dream.
Okay, and then talks about split screens. So the point that he's raising, which he didn't finish there, is how much does the director's method of bringing the story to you impact whether or not the story works or not?
It's huge.
It's everything.
When I think of split screen, I think of, and I didn't finish Heavenly Sword, but the moment where, oh God, I've been drinking
Nadiko
too much.
and
Kai is guiding her father.
Yes, that scene.
Across
the sniping
bridge.
scene, yes.
Exactly, and so they have this sort of like picture-in-picture, so you can sort of see him close up, and it adds a ton of emotion to the scene, and does that fit with the kind of? Does that feel like in-game enough for you, or is that sort of still too much narrative?
I'm not familiar with that.
Well,
specific.
it's a scene
but
where
I mean, I do appreciate
I could
like
explain
good
it.
direction, good choreography, blocking.
It's everything's
traditional
in game.
stagecraft.
You're in control the entire time. Like
Yeah.
I think what would offend you the most, Sean, you never probably played Xenosaga, but Xenosaga Episode 1, you do set the controller down and watch a CG cutscene for 45 minutes.
I've heard.
45 minutes.
That's when you hit the skip button.
I
even
remember
hate
that.
it.
Or
make one
hate it when there's,
fantastic
like,
sandwich.
Too much text, like even there are times, not so much at Zelda Phantom Hourglass, which I'm playing, but it reminds me of games like it where it's just going to bombard you with text. Actually, Puzzle Quest. Someone
Mass
loaned me
Effect
that, and it started
bombards you with
throwing me all
text.
this text. I was like,
It
this is
But
shitty fanfic. I'm not going to fucking read it. Let me play Bejeweled.
Puzzle
and use
Quest is
mana.
fucking Bejeweled. I don't want to read any shit in
Or
that.
put that stuff on a website. You know
So,
what I'm saying?
well, let me ask you a question. Why are
off
we
to it in your
so
own privacy
why are
of
we
your
so
home.
quick to dismiss it as shitty fanfic? And why does it have to be shitty fanfic? A lot of effort goes into this.
Because here's the thing.
Effort
here's the
doesn't
thing.
make good.
It goes back to what
Effort doesn't make good, but some of these guys know what the hell they're doing.
It goes back to what Shane said. The reason I drew the analogy that I did earlier is that story for commercial movies is the lingua franca of movies. It's told in images.
Absolutely.
Right? And there are strains of art house cinema and other things that are really primarily focused on images, but for the most part, for commercial cinema, the story is lingua franca. For games, it's gameplay. And so the thing is, it's kind of like, look, get the gameplay right, and it's not an either-or thing, but the fact is, it's like, a lot of these stories, because, look, games are ultimately not as good a storytelling medium as movies are, as TV is, or novels are. The fact of the matter is, it's like, it would be like asking, and nor should we expect it to be. You wouldn't you would not expect a painting to tell a story as well as a novel, so why should you expect that from a game? It's fundamentally different media.
I might expect a painting to elicit an emotional response.
And
strong.
you can and should expect that from a game, but
And-
a story
and
is
by
not
the way-
the only way to elicit emotion.
Yeah.
By the way, my picture, my painting that you're talking about has no timeline of anything transpiring. It's a single solitary
It does if
moment
it's
in
Marcel
space.
Duchamp. Nude descending the staircase.
I don't think any guy is saying that games don't have the potential to outdo every other medium because it can do everything. But
That was fucking awesome, by the way, Sean.
Actually, I was an art student before.
That was
I became an
fucking
English
awesome.
student.
Love it.
But yeah, I think the base level from a game is gameplay, and like if you get a good story, that's awesome.
Okay, so
but I don't expect it
And it
from,
can
from Puzzle
enhance.
Quest.
I'm willing to accept that there's sort of gameplay, there's story, and other things. It might be multiplayer and those kind of things, and they combine to create what I would call an experience. And story can enhance the experience. That's what happens in Half-Life and Portal and things like that. Like where Portal, the gameplay is awesome and would be awesome
Portal
no matter what.
Portal wouldn't need a story.
It's
It
even
doesn't need
good.
it.
The Flash game, the Flash version of Portal is a lot of fun. But the thing is, like, part of what people respond to, would it have been the same without the weighted companion cube, GLaDOS, and the song at the end? Like, that adds to the overall experience. But if they had, like, let's say they nailed all that stuff, but the gameplay was
And
ass.
in that game, it's not only what you discover, but it's the potential that you may discover more than is actually there. So if you're a big fan of the series and you're picking up on some of the really obscure things, like the keys that spell Adrian Shepard on the keyboard or are painted yellow, you're like, how much can I find? Should I dig more? And even if it's not really paid off, it's like that mindset you're in.
Embedded narrative.
But what's cool about Portal, and I think this, so what I'm starting to gel here on one thing here is that I think I'm starting to gravitate more towards the extremes of games that I like. For instance, I'm still playing Peggle on my iPod all the fucking time because the just sitting there and playing it mechanic of it is very cool, and the just sitting there and playing it mechanic of Portal is very cool. And at the same time, I can get completely caught up in Yakuza. And dismiss the combat part, and dismiss the going through a bunch of battles part, and dismiss the running around the world part because I just want the story part. And I disagree with you about games not being able to deliver stories because it's a different medium. And I sit down. The only thing that I could equate a game to is a mini-series because it's definitely a longer experience than a movie. It's definitely not the sort of experience, at least to date, of a television show, except for maybe Sam & Max. Sam & Max has been doing episodic well.
Well, and those are short stories and novellas. There's
Right.
quite a bit of room already between, miniseries and full-length movies and novels. There's like a big range of
there's an interesting space there to deliver a fleshed out narrative in a time space that's not a book where you're reading an expansive number of pages or a movie where you sit down for a 2-hour chunk.
Here's the thing. What Engai was saying, last point on this is, I mean, obviously this is endemic to new media. When photography was introduced, criticisms were thrown against it.
Sure.
It's not painting. When film came out, this is not staged. It can never be staged because it lacks this and that. And then now it's comic books yet again. Then I mean, even music, forms of music, hip hop, jazz, everything. And then it comes to the point you realize you judge it on its own merits. And I think that's just what Engai.
And we're going to slowly build. We're going to slowly build our Ansel Adams and our Miles Davises and make progress down the road.
Speaking of developers.
Speaking of making progress on down that road, we have developers here in town, San Francisco, next week. And as you've probably seen from Andrew's postings, we have an unfriggin' believable podcasting lineup next week. So, what are you guys looking forward to at GDC?
Not the keynotes. They're pretty lame this year.
They are weak this year.
There's a few cool sessions, like Brian was saying. Sakurai, the guy who made Smash Brothers, he's giving kind of a post-mortem on Smash Brothers.
Because the thing about him is that he's a reclusive, and the fact that you hear these rumors he doesn't sleep ever, and over 1 hour a night.
He's a genius, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah,
that'll be interesting.
I heard. Did you hear the one that he rides around in a stretch Pontiac Aztec limo?
That's hot.
I just made that one up.
Ugliest vehicle ever made.
There's some other good ones though.
Wait, Shane. Wait a second though. Why are you hating on the keynotes off the top? I mean, John Shappert
is that the Microsoft guy or is that the futurist?
He's the Microsoft guy.
Oh, okay.
And he was the Wii guy at at EA.
Oh well.
And on top of it, from what I hear from people,
that's supposed to impress me because Boogie was so fucking awesome.
No, he
no, but they have that ninja game.
Madden.
Oh, that one's really good too.
Madden was one of the games that he supervised. You know what I'm saying? The first Madden on Wii.
Okay.
But the other thing is
family play.
The other thing is, and I'm gonna get to talk to him at some point after his keynote. But I do know for a fact that the people at EA were really bummed that he left. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was in some ways kind of inevitable because if you look at the new structure, you know what I'm saying, there were sort of 4 silos and he didn't get one of the silos, so maybe it was kind of inevitable he left. But I mean, they not only they love him, they think he's going to be. They think they were saying he's going to be an awesome fit at Microsoft.
That's the first thing I've heard.
But okay, what do you think he's going to do for Microsoft that they're not doing now?
I don't know. From what I hear from people who know him, they say he's a guy who rolls up his sleeves, gets to work. People there loved him. The people who worked for him loved him. And honestly, the impression I get is that he's going. I think at some point, don't know when, I think Matrick is going to move on, and I would not be surprised if Shappert was running the business. I think he's being groomed for it because he's got Robbie above him to sort of backstop the whole thing. And the other thing is, at the end of the day, from what I hear, Matrick's not at Microsoft 5 days a week. Well, he still lives in Vancouver. I think he kind of parachutes in 2-3 days a week, parachutes out. He's got his own developer separate from Microsoft. With a couple of ex-EA guys, if I'm not mistaken, one of the key guys from Need for Speed, and another of the key guys from NBA Street, separate developer that he owns, separate from Microsoft. So, I like Matrick. I think he's a really, sharp guy. Did a lot of amazing stuff at EA. But, when I hear those sort of things, I sort of wonder, well, what exactly is his level of commitment? It's like Project Mayhem and Fight Club. You determine your own level of commitment. What's his level of commitment?
Okay, so
I don't know.
You have peak my interest on this one, but I'm saying the pure, star power is no Iwata, no Miyamoto, no Jay Allard, no Phil Harrison.
Fair enough.
This futurist guy, is not even Sid Mead. That's the one futurist I know.
All right, so then out of the rest of the panels, what are you going to go and listen to?
Well, Square Enix, their main programmer behind the White Engine of Final Fantasy 13, is giving a session about White Engine, and no one's ever seen it moving or going, and the idea of a third party coming out here and be like, yeah, this is our PS3 engine. That's kind of a big deal for Sony.
Definitely.
Nintendo has a WiiWare one. That's exciting. We've never really seen WiiWare.
I mean, isn't Epic doing something? I mean,
I
was just told actually I have to skip this podcast on Wednesday to
go
cover,
to Epic.
Yeah, they cover the
Peter
Epic.
Molyneux's doing a Fable 2 thing. That's exciting.
He's talking 3 things, 3 bullet points out of Fable 2. So that'll be interesting. And Guy, what about you?
Is one of them next gen graphics?
and a dog, next gen dog graphics.
In all honesty, since I haven't registered yet, I've been waiting until I register to go through the schedule.
I love that you're doing a panel and you're not even registered.
Oh, and I hear Garnet's going to be in a panel. That's going to be great.
The fuck?
I was serious.
Dude, I heard you're going to be on a panel too. Is it going to be great?
You're administering it. You tell me. What have the questions been like? So tell us, first of all, what is the panel?
The panel, I have to do it from memory, even though I was the one who wrote the description, is up against the wall. Developers confront the gaming press. And so the pitch was that 365 days a year, developers are under scrutiny from the media. This is their time to fire back against an all-star panel of gaming media. And I selected the people that I selected from the panel so there would be a cross-section. So we've got, Garnet sort of representing sort of like the podcast thing. As you know, I'm a big fan of yours, so I wanted that.
Thanks.
We've got Steven Totillo, who's mainstream and MTV, sort of blogging.
He's representing the hack segment.
Apparently so. I'm not going to argue with you on your own goddamn show. We've got Jeff.
Love you, Steven.
We've got Jeff Keighley, who's
he's the dean
of game journalists and a creature of television these days, but comes out of a print background, Entertainment Weekly, Business 2.0. We've got Andy McNamara, Game Informer, which is the biggest Cirque gaming magazine in North America. And then we've got Brian Crescente from Kotaku. So I wanted to have that sort of mix and range of things. But what's interesting is, so the way I did it is that I'm not writing the questions. I'm soliciting questions from developers themselves. So through ways and means and nooks and crannies, I'm getting developers to submit questions. Some will have their names attached to them. Others would rather be anonymous so that the guilty can be protected. But the one thing is, I thought it would be more wide-ranging in some ways, and their relentless focus, understandably so in hindsight, is reviews. I mean, they want to know about the reviews process. You know what I'm saying? Like, how does that work? What factors go into it? Like, all these things. And
I'm kind of surprised it's so mysterious to them. It's like, we play the games and say how we feel about them.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a good panel. Hopefully it'll be well-attended, and I'm excited about doing it.
Hopefully, I'm excited about doing it too. You're not giving me any info, so if you're a developer out there listening and wondering if he's spilling the beans on like what I should be getting ready for, he's not giving it up.
If I need to bring some bourbon to get you excited, I'll bring it.
If you need help, man, I'll be on the sideline for
represent.
Doing voices?
No, I'll do battle with those guys.
Nice.
Like I'm a staunch defender of critics.
So the other interesting part about GDC is it definitely puts the developers forward into the limelight more so than an E3, because E3 is very much a PR-driven sort of environment, right?
Well, it's all about the games.
It's all about
the games.
Right. It's all about the games. Whereas GDC, while it's not DICE and it's not completely in the artistic realm, it's very much still a developers conference. It puts developers out there as the front men, which is why we're doing these series next week with very many filled with personalities from the development business. What do you think? Where are we right now compared to 2 or 3 years ago with developers being able to stand out there in front of the limelight and say, you know what, I'm representing gaming as an industry?
I think it's gotten a little bit better, but still, baby steps.
Why only baby steps? I mean, I think we have some great personalities.
Well, there's a handful. I mean, but it's still just a handful.
Aren't there only a handful in any industry?
Not in other media industries like movies or music or television.
But aren't there a handful
aren't
there a handful that stand above and beyond
I
the rest?
think the average person knows what famous authors look like more than famous game developers.
So we can latch on to some of the big ones right now. For instance, go ahead.
Go on.
No,
I was going to take the subject in another direction.
They'll take it. Feel free. This is open.
Well, I mean, for me, just the whole. It's not just a matter of do we have enough or are they good, but also how complicated of a situation it is, because say game design is not like architecture where say you're an architect and you have a construction crew will then complete a building precisely according to your plans. With a modern day development studio, at any level, at any tier in the sort of development hierarchy, just serious input and revision can occur. So when you have I'm going to use Ken Levine as an example because he's someone who's outspoken and we're used to hearing from. And this is not an anecdote from BioShock's development or anything, but theoretically there's people below him and they're involved in the project and are responsible for many of the ideas that people responded so well to. And it's just the fact of the matter, because you can't have 20 people answering every interviewer's question, that he's going to be doing it. And he's very charismatic and he's wonderful at that. But you always have to wonder how. I'm curious how they negotiate. And I mean, navigate the minefield among, with because everyone wants credit for what they do, right? And imagine you're patrolling boards and say you're like an associate level designer, and you know that you're responsible for like another hypothetical. Maybe you made the companion cube. That was your idea. And you can't ever step up because there's the equivalent of someone else that gets all the face time, a Cliffy B or something. That's going to cause some stress. That's an issue.
How different is that from any other medium that basically it takes a collective of people to sort of get it done? I mean, at the end of the day, so who's the most famous movie director probably of all time is Steven Spielberg.
Right.
Right? And, he's the one who does the interviews and whatnot. But if you look at it, like, he uses, John Williams is there over and over. Janusz Kaminski is the cinematographer he's been using for years. I think Michael Kahn is the guy who's been editing his movies. And, like, you look at a director like Scorsese who, like, praises to the moon Thelma Schoonmaker for the editing of his movies. I mean, it is a team effort, and, we in the media are pretty simplistic. So, we, like to have a figurehead or a spokesperson. But I don't think it's actually that different from any other sort of media, like where there's a team, medium where there's a team.
I'm curious if you find it troubling. So we recently heard that Microsoft had hired Kudo Tsuyoda, who's a cool guy, the guy who used to do Fight Night, to head up a future Gears of War project. So if in 2 months' time they wheel him out as the spokesperson for Gears of War 2, a game we know he's the franchise. But so when and if they wheel him out to debut Gears of War 2, a game he has nothing to do with, really? Like, what does that mean?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, what is nothing to do with? I mean, if you look at, say, again, I hate to go to other media, but look at someone like Dick Wolf and the Law and Order franchises. He didn't direct any of the episodes. And TV's more of a producer and writer's medium. But even if you go to movies, look at Scott Rudin and the number of movies that he's made. I mean, No Country for Old Men, The Hours. I'm saying, like, all these movies, you look at his kind of thing and, like, his taste. He's got exquisite taste. He's fighting to get these movies made. He's involved intimately, probably with casting and choosing the directors. I'm saying? Now, it's a little different here in terms of...
This is more in tune with when Tarantino will help distribute a movie and put his name on it, have absolutely nothing to do with it. I think that's kind of what we're seeing here with Gears of War.
It's still interesting.
That worked out pretty damn well for Hero, by the way.
It did.
Which Hero is one of my all-time favorite movies, and it got play because of that.
But here's the thing: does a Gears of War need Kudo to help it sell?
They already have Cliffy B.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah, Cliffy. I mean, what else do they need? I mean, they got one of the so-called superstars of.
Well, but I think two of those, Kudo and Cliffy, they're very charismatic guys, and I think the charismatic guys are the ones you can put in front of the camera, you can do the interviews with, and it helps sell your product.
Well, here's the thing:
they should have put Kudo in charge like Banjo or something like that. That helped that franchise,
No, what I was going to say is, like, look at the criticism, which I think, I have a number of friends, and one really good friend in particular, who's a producer, and was really upset about the criticism that was being aimed at Jade Raymond, in the wake of the Something Awful it was Chugworth Academy comic and that kind of thing, and there was a lot of sentiment in the community, a number of the boards we read and things like that she should not have been the spokesperson that, I guess...
Because it was Patrice's game?
Exactly. And the thing is, it's like, again, like, maybe I'm a little biased because I'm Canadian. They're both Canadian, so I stand up for them both. But Patrice is, like, eloquent, and he's certainly good-looking. And, he's got his little, like, French accent to go along with it. I mean, he certainly could have been a spokesperson for the game. But the thing is, at the end of the day, when you look at Assassin's Creed, and I think regardless of what you think of what the final score was or whatnot, clearly it was a very ambitious game. Can't the community allow for the possibility that the design and creation of that game was time-consuming enough that it made sense to let Jade, who's in a producer position, which is more of an oversight position, and some of that can be done remotely, to basically be the one to go out on tour? I'm not saying that Ubisoft was purely focused on, let's let Patrice be in a room making the game the best it can be. I'm not saying they didn't have ulterior motives, but at the end of the day, to sort of say that a producer has nothing to do with the game, like, I mean, Scott Rudin didn't direct No Country for Old Men, but I bet you that they were bouncing off ideas and who to cast and who to this and who to that. I'm sure Jade had a lot to do with the game. So pretend she didn't, and I think that's what you see in a lot of these things. And Kudo, look at the games that came out of Kudo's studio. Look what he did with Fight Night.
Right.
Knockout Kings was on its way out.
Didn't exist. It was done.
All due deference to the House of Epic. Gears of War and in general their product could definitely use an injection of something other than Space Marine that looks the same as every other fucking Space Marine I've ever seen them turn out.
But come on, I mean, give them credit. Also, it was a single player experience that they really hadn't ever nailed yet.
I think they nailed it.
And they nailed it in many ways.
To the point where they're influencing other games.
Exactly, hugely. And if things happen as we all expect, this game will be teased next week and then come out this fall. It probably will be the biggest game of.
I will say,
and I look forward to it more by virtue of what someone else could inject into it.
But I gotta say what I heard about.
I don't think Kuda's gonna have that much experience.
Before we move on, a quick aside: what I heard about Gears 2 at DICE is 5-on-5, different camera angle. That's what I heard. For multiplayer.
So to bring this thing all home, the one other very interesting element is that, and this is something that like OneUp was built on, is that the video gaming community has very much been built through a sense of community, of people interacting with one another. We're one of the most active blogging communities out there on the internet. We've always had a sense of ownership from the person who plays a game through the person who develops a game, and always feeling connected at all levels. And it's interesting to see that, and I guess the biggest case example I can have is we recently had to unfortunately announce that David Jaffe is probably not going to be able to attend GDC next week, and I was amazed by this thread on Gaming Age forums of "Get well soon, David."
Well, do they really care about his health? They just want to hear him on the podcast.
They
just want to hear him on the podcast.
I think both. I think maybe I'm naive, but I'm going to say I think both. I mean, so how much does this sense of connection with the community impact the celebrity stature of developers in the video game business?
Real quick, it's funny that Paul Wedgwood from from Splash Damage. Sort of the last time I talked to him was talking about how he's waiting to see the full development of a Gamerazzi, and I think this is pretty close to it.
Okay,
when gamers are wishing that, basically sending chicken noodle soup over to some of the people associated with the games they make when they find that they're sick.
They send you guys liquor, right?
They do. Well,
we encourage that.
We don't develop a game.
And wasn't there a pie at some point?
No.
Or some sort of dessert?
Was there dessert?
There was a cheesecake.
There was a cheesecake. That's what I thought.
It was a cheesecake.
Look, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I sort of said, it's like, I mean, we're talking about comparisons to early other media, is that one of the things I like about games is that the creators are relatively accessible, certainly compared to other media. I mean, I know a film critic at Newsweek, who will remain nameless, but, talked about, sort of piling in the car with Jack Nicholson for a profile, driving down to Mexico and smoking up, getting high, and like that kind of thing. And like now these days, it's so publicist controlled, you don't get that kind of access. And games industry is pretty publicist controlled, but at the end of the day, we have more and better access, I think, to the key figures, especially at events like DICE and GDC, than you would in other media. And I think that makes a real difference. And I think for the fans, I mean, the fact that they're on these message boards, they're closer in age to some of these guys, and so they'll jump in and participate. I think that makes a difference. I mean, Jaffe certainly jumps onto GAF and other message boards anywhere where his honor is being questioned. He can certainly be there. I think the one thing these guys need to realize, because some of them I think get stunned at the backlash or the stuff that gets said, and the way I look at it is very similar to, the analogy I use is like Iraq, where basically you've got the statue of Saddam and it got toppled, and then they beat it with their shoes, which is a huge insult in Arab culture. The fact of the matter is that developers, they'll put you on that pedestal and then they'll knock you down and beat you with the shoes. And you can't take that personally, and you can't also assume that just because you jump onto a message board that you're just like them. You know what I'm saying? Because you're not. And you have to get it straight and be very understanding that if you jump in a board, it's a complete unruly democracy there. And so on that level, like, when they're speaking to us and through us, they have this position of authority. But when they jump into that message board, there's guys there who have been established, who are much longer, who have an army behind them, and you could get ripped up. Don't expect to be loved and that you're on the same level. You can talk to them like your friends or whatnot. Like, understand what you're getting into, developers, when you jump into a message board.
And those armies have been in motion right now because they have had possibly the biggest rallying call to arms in quite a while with those NPD numbers that have just hit the forums. I'm sure they're still out there. When we come back in just a minute with the news, we're going to kick it off with the NPD's nuts.
Shane's looking excited.
We'll be right back. All right, and here we go with the NPD numbers for the U.S. video game industry sales through January 2008. So here's a quick disclaimer. We didn't do comparative numbers because I haven't had a chance, as you know, we record the show on Thursday night. I haven't had a chance to divide them out. In January of 2007, that was a 5-week month, while this recording period was a 4-week month. So we're not going to do comparables. We're just going to go through this real quick.
But even if you eyeball it.
If you eyeball, go ahead. Give me the eyeball. By the way, let me give you the big deal of the day, which is 360 owners or supporters rallying to support of their console, coming in at the bottom of the heap, as N-Guy pointed out to me, even slightly under the PlayStation Portable, with Wii once again in the front, but PlayStation 3 hardly very far behind it. So the Wii did 274,000 units. PlayStation 3, a very strong 269,000 units, beating the Nintendo DS. That's pretty freaking impressive. I think that's really impressive.
But
be careful. Microsoft yesterday managed their expectations. Jeff Bell said that, hey, they underestimated demand.
Whatever.
They weren't able to ship enough consoles. And if you've been to any stores, all you see are arcade and Halo packs. So the elites and the premiums that people want not to be found.
Right. As they told the Seattle paper, I'm sorry, we were supply constrained. We weren't able to meet
What's
demand.
interesting is they're supply constrained of the units people want. But they're not supply constrained of like the Halo 3 units, which people don't
still
want.
floating around in every Target I walk into.
Which is kind of bizarre because you sort of wonder, like, when did they place their orders and stuff? And how are you coming out of your third Christmas, the Christmas that comes after you release Halo 3, the game that's supposed to rock you into profitability, certainly for the quarter, potentially even the entire fiscal year, and you didn't plan well enough? You weren't tracking this. You didn't know. I don't know what it is, and I'm not into conspiracy theories, but something else is going on. I don't buy the supply shortages, and like you said, I mean, maybe it's just as simple as you're saying, Shane, where they just mismanaged. They thought people would go more for the arcade SKU and the Halo SKU than they did, but this is really, if that's what it is, it's abysmal planning on Microsoft's part, and we'll just have to wait and see the the February numbers to really get a sense of what
and a fundamental lack of understanding of what the customer was going to want out of their SKU lineup.
So my thing is, what are we attributing PS3? Where's the spike?
Blu-ray victory is being valued as the main thing that
That's
happened.
definitely a big point, right?
Point.
But I think the other thing that's out there right now is that we know that the SKUs are again being changed, that the ones that have solid backwards compatibility are going away. There's an opportunity for some clearance pricing out there, maybe at some retailers. And there's people who are finally saying, you know what, if I'm going to get one that has good backwards compatibility, I need to act now. I need to buy this thing now.
This is for Sony's first major month. I don't know. Did they even pass 360? I don't think when they launched. Were they ahead?
I think this is definitely the first month they've been this far ahead of some of the
and so we just, it's, while I'm sure there are Sony fanboys out there who are jumping up and down, saying we're number one, waving the foam finger, we want to see more of this out of them. But to me, what's important, actually far more important, is not even so much that Sony beat Microsoft. Okay. That's all well and great. I'm sure they're excited about it in Foster City. 269 is between the 200,000, which is not so good. And remember, they were going way below that last year in some months. And it's closing in on the 300,000, which is quite good. So if Sony can kind of maintain that performance, maybe that's not enough to beat Microsoft month in, month out, but if they can hang between 200,000 and 300,000, that's a good place for them to be.
And here's the thing, their lineup, software-wise, only gets better.
Only getting better.
Only gets better every month.
And what's really good for them is that they're starting off 2008 now clearly on a roll, clearly gathering momentum. The question becomes to me, is this a stumble for Microsoft, or is it the beginning of the decline? I'm not saying the sky is falling. What do you guys think?
I think
sky
it's a
falling?
stumble. I think it's a stumble. I
think in America the war is far from over, and in the UK as well, but in the numbers coming out of the rest of Europe, Australia, other places, and it's looking like more than a stumble.
We were talking earlier this week with some developers about the distribution of hardware throughout the world. And of course, we know North America is still very much a 360 stronghold. I've heard
it's actually a Wii stronghold.
Okay, but it's also a 360 stronghold.
Well, yeah, of course.
In the scheme of things, it's a 360 stronghold.
People tend to forget about the Wii.
I'm not forgetting about the Wii.
It's ubiquitous.
Christ. And it's also very popular in France, which was part of what I wanted to get to, which was I've always heard most of Europe referred to as a PS3 as the world of PS3, but it's not exactly that. For instance, Burnout sold very well there in the UK on 360. France was portrayed to me as a Wii stronghold, and then Spain and Italy as PS3. So I'm not sure that Europe is going to be as unified in this whole division of the console riches as maybe we've thought before.
And it complicates things, but I mean, I emailed some questions over to EAPR in the wake of not their analyst briefing, but their last earnings call, where John Riccatello talked about the problems that they had developing on PS3 in the past, and basically sort of implying that that they'd worked some of that stuff out, and also seeing better results from games that were developed for PS3 first. So I shot over some questions to corporate communications and said to them, like, so is this a sign that across the board you guys are going to lead on PS3 when you know that's going to be product quality, when improved product quality overall, when on the other hand, just based on install base in North America, you're better off developing on 360 first and getting that right, because that's where you're going to sell the most games? And the answer I got back was that they don't push the studios into anything on that kind of thing. They let the studios sort of make that decision that, Alex Ward and Criterion wanted to lead on PS3, so lead on PS3 is not going to be across the board.
Tiburon is very 360 right now.
Exactly. And you notice, if you guys listen to that analyst briefing, so Peter Moore singled out improving their games on Wii, said nothing about getting PS3 running at 60 frames like the 360 version.
Well, it's obvious because if you've seen their last two sports releases, FIFA Street and NFL Tour, they still run like dog shit compared to the 360 version.
And
so
Peter's a smart guy. I'm not saying it's leftover, PS3 hatred from, or Sony hatred from when they pushed Dreamcast out of the business, and then, all that other stuff.
Are you pointing towards the conspiracy theory of the trading executives between Microsoft and EA?
No, not that. But I do think, there's even a larger problem in sports. From what I'm reading, because you guys do assign review scores, I don't. There are some quality issues in EA Sports, which is the flagship, and some of that is being reflected in sales.
Madden sales last year
were
down. Abysmal.
They weren't abysmal. Being dramatic.
They were, compared to your previous, huge drop.
With no competition.
Huge drop.
So I think Peter Moore has some real things to sort out. And while I'm excited that now they've done the deal with IMG, which I guess that Madden and whoever the new producer is on the game, because the producer left, right. David Ortiz. I guess they'll be hanging out with supermodels and LeBron James and like these guys now that they're with IMG. But they really have some stuff that they got to fix.
Here's the thing about what they have to do with Madden. I'm a hardcore Madden guy. The game has become a hardcore experience. People cannot just pick up and play Madden anymore. I actually talked to Peter Moore about this when he announced, the NFL deal. He said his big motto is making it approachable, making it more approachable, making it more accessible. That's what has to happen with the PS3 and 360 games.
All right, back to these MPDs. I think the biggest news here, besides hardware, is software, and it's not the Call of Duty 4 is number one. It's the fact that Rock Band for 360 is number 4, and if this was ranked by Money Made, that would be number 1 with a bullet, huge bullet.
Because DLC.
No, because it costs $179 dollars, and it sold almost 200,000 units in the month of January.
Well, let's be fair to Guitar Hero. So many copies of Guitar Hero sold since it came out on 360 that who's left to buy it?
But I'm just happy that Rock Band has legs. I really am.
I think it's a really good sign, and this is a conversation I've had with, some key people at Activision, just sort of chatting off the record and stuff, or even on the record, and sort of saying that, I really felt that the people who made the core gamers who made Guitar Hero a hit were going to transition to Rock Band as their primary experience.
Next step.
And, obviously, Guitar Hero has gone completely mass, and there's tons of money to be made, but slowly but surely, I think Rock Band's going to expand and continue growing. I know my sister and her girlfriend, they were, hanging out over the holidays.
But let's
put them on Rock Band. They loved it.
Let's not oversell the Guitar Hero going away, because Guitar Hero 3 for Wii did phenomenally.
Yep.
The Guitar Hero for 360 also in here. The thing that stands out to me about the software chart is that the rich keep getting richer. This is a very narrow.
There are only 3 new games.
Activision must be very happy right now.
Well, yeah, but there are only 3 new games in the top 10, and those are Burnout Paradise at number 6. 6.
Seven.
7 for 360, and then looks like Mario Party and Mario and Sonic for DS both tied it.
I got to say, Mario and Sonic Olympic Games coming in at number 10 was a little bit of a surprise
For
me.
DS? It's
Well,
Mario and
how
Sonic.
much does it cost? I mean,
$29.
But
Shane, since you've been, I'm not going to call you a fanboy, but you've been identified with Sony platforms, even though we know you love the Wii and many other platforms. What do you make of the fact that Wii Guitar Hero 3 is in the top 10, but PS2 Guitar Hero 3 nowhere to be seen on a much bigger install base?
PS2 hung tough for many months. I mean, like throughout the fourth quarter, it was above. It wasn't above always. It was always above Wii, but it was usually beat by 360. But yeah, I don't really know. I don't understand PS2 buyer habits. They're not buying Rock Band, obviously.
Time for that PS2 price cut to $99?
Maybe. Been
All
a
right.
long time coming.
any wrap up on software before we leave software behind?
PS3 is still struggling with software. I mean,
Yeah,
their
and-
hardware numbers are jumping, but their software, I mean, at least in the top 10, ain't.
And Microsoft, it was sort of interesting because I got Microsoft's spin before I got the numbers. And, they were talking about, their usual stuff about it's the number one home for software, most software sold, best third-party software performance, like all this stuff. And it's like when you get the numbers, like, oh, I know why they were focused on that. But the fact of the matter is, as great as it is for Sony fanboys that Sony came out ahead this month, the fact of the matter is that 360 is still a better overall ecosystem for third parties, and will be for some time.
And it also proves Shane's point that they're buying it for Blu-ray, not necessarily.
Okay, so I want to get to that in just 1 second. I would to back up your point, N-Guy, I would point to Burnout Paradise only appearing on this list on 360, which says to me that there's a good deal of people who own both 360s and PS3s who elected to go 360.
I would argue Burnout Paradise didn't have a full month of sales, and it did.
But why? So why did PS3 not book?
Because the install user base is a fraction.
Let's just say that if
it had been hot on PS3,
let's just say that if I happened to have some access to numbers that went beyond the top 10, that what we saw on, I think Call of Duty was like 3-1 on 360 to PS3 in its first month, and Assassins was about 2-1. Burnout on 360 to PS3 is under 2-1.
Good.
Like the gap is closing.
Good for them.
And it's in the top 20.
And the interesting thing about Assassins worldwide is they're like neck and neck because of Europe.
So there you go. So you asked about how much Blu-ray was impacting things. So there was a story earlier this week on the tech blog Gizmodo about a rumor that started because of an alleged survey that Netflix was going to show up on downloadable services. And the first one that I saw was Xbox Live. And I'm curious what you guys think as to how important it is. To me, the point of this story is how important is it that your home console, especially if it's a 360 or PS3, delivers HD movies to your television screen?
Well, 360 already does that without Netflix.
Through HD DVD, which we're all
through Marketplace.
Through Marketplace, but
Microsoft already rents high definition movies. Why would they want to partner with Netflix unless they just want all those subscribers? Like if you can partner.
What do you mean?
Well,
that's it. That is the point.
But what do you pay to get that when you already when you're already offering that on your own? Like, is it really worth it to buy all those subscribers?
How important would it be for them to lock Netflix up and keep Netflix off?
I think
PS3?
it's in Sony and Microsoft's best interest to do it themselves.
I think. Look, I mean, so to your point, Shane. I mean, look at the deal that Sony's sort of retrenching around UMD, and so now they're going to be publishing UMDs from like Viacom and other things, which I think is smart. I don't know how much of a business is ultimately there, but
I think they need to be really low price. I think I hear 10. I wish they were 5.
Exactly, but they are lower priced. But I do think, to your other point, I do think it's more likely actually that something like Netflix would show up on PS3. Because Sony hasn't even unveiled sort of its strategy, and it's not even clear necessarily. They're so hooked for good or bad on this like open platform strategy, so they don't tell developers to do demos on PSN because it's up to the developer, which I'm just kind of like, guys, you should have demos for all your downloadable games. But that's very much sort of their defining philosophy. So it does result in, I think, silly things like that, but then you do get great things like massive downloads, like a Tekken, like a Warhawk, and other things like that. And so I think you'd be more likely to see a Netflix show up on PS3.
So let me ask you a question. When you look down the road to Holiday 08, if the PS3 sits there as a great Blu-ray player, and all signs now point to the Blu-ray format being the winner in the HD disc.
The announcement this week that Netflix is moving away from it and the Best Buy is moving away from it. Those are writings on the wall.
How does that impact 360's ability to go up against its competitor in the holiday market for 2008?
It makes a difference, but I mean, look, games matter most, and so the key thing is that Sony looks to have a really good lineup from first party alone on games, and then third party will factor in. I'm still curious to see what's going to happen with GTA. How strongly is GTA identified as a PlayStation platform by platform owners versus, sort of the amount of marketing that Microsoft's going to put into it and the additional content. But I do think that little sound difficulty, perhaps.
Little scratchy.
I do think that Blu-ray becomes more and more of a factor with every price drop. That's like what we're saying. So if Sony does another $50 to $100 price drop this year, with every price drop, just looking at the value, PS3 becomes a better value with Microsoft than the 360.
So they've led themselves with Call of Duty 4 on the 360, and that was also the leader at the AIAS Game Awards at DICE last week. Shane, you were there.
So was Zynga, I'd imagine. Yeah, Call of Duty swept and took every single trophy that Halo 3 was nominated for.
Are you kidding me? Just like it walked
I don't think
across.
That's fair.
Okay, why is that wrong? What's wrong about
it? It won Best Online Game over Halo, and if you think about like Forge and save films, that kind of stuff.
I do think Call of Duty 4 did some cool things with like their level up system, but just the unbelievable amount of customizability.
I thought you didn't play Call of Duty 4 this week because you didn't have time.
But I know what the features are
from not playing it.
No, from before. I know I'm not a moron, and I'm just saying the amount of customizability you have on Halo in terms of the game, in terms of the environment. I think that's a Call of Duty 4 is a good game. Don't get me wrong; it should win.
So how does the weapon improvement system in Halo 3 work?
That's one aspect. Come on, dude. There's so much more to Halo 3. You're not giving it credit for. That's really unfair.
I was just wondering, since you'd spent enough time with Call of Duty 4 to make the comparison.
But it was a little weird. It almost felt.
I'm just saying, I don't know.
But Garnet,
you're ridiculous.
Time controlling.
Yeah, not time for trolling.
Why could I not troll him? Come on, it's fun.
Quit trolling. But at the awards, there was a feeling like maybe it was like backlash, like weird backlash against Halo 3.
Really?
That was kind
Why
of
would people backlash against Halo 3?
I think
Forge. I have said. I think Forge was really imaginative. I mean, I'm not a big fan. I actually don't like the pace of Halo 3. Because for one thing, I'm not especially good at it. And that certainly turns you off to it. But I thought Forge was really inventive.
The handful of developers I know did seem to, and I'll express it's a handful, did seem to prefer Call of Duty 4 over Halo and Halo 3, and that was long before DICE.
Part of it's Halo 2 is just it's reaching its peak. I think, I honestly do. I think with its audience, and we've just had enough of it. I mean, we know the Halo experience, and at this point, it's like, hey,
they drank all the Mountain Dew and they're done.
Right? Yeah, Mountain Dew overload, man.
All right, you guys want to latch on to any of these game announcements? Red Alert 3, Mass Effect for PC, or BioWare coming back to KOTOR?
Mass Effect for PC is interesting because of who's publishing it.
BioWare KOTOR, man, that's huge.
But they're denying it.
They're denying it.
BioWare is denying it.
Okay.
I think it's true.
It is a slam dunk going to happen. Whatever they're working on, something Star Wars. It's guaranteed this is going to happen.
I think it's true, but they are currently denying it.
And to throw out speculation, I mean, we do know, or at least I knew, that, Lucas was shopping sort of the LucasArts licenses and stuff like that. You got to wonder with Electronic Arts, Riccatello is big on mergers and acquisition. Is this a prelude to the fact that he's letting an internal studio work on outside stuff? And that was probably in the works before it was acquired. You got to wonder, could that be a prelude to Lucas properties getting, basically the license getting bought by EA and Lucas sort of bowing out? Especially with Jim Ward leaving.
Red Alert 3. Come on, somebody's excited about Red Alert.
I didn't play.
Somebody's excited about Red Alert 3.
I was late bloomer for PC.
Is that a dirt mining game?
The thing about Red Alert that sounds cool, though, is that aside from the co-op aspect of it, is just the whole... At first, you read about you're like bears in armor and like controlling dolphin squads.
What?
And you think about that, you think of like drawing a box around the dolphins and hearing them go... And then like, whatever.
You just sold me on that game.
However, the whole thing is based on like... the most harebrained technology that was actually in development or considered by some government. So, I mean, of course, the American Navy did, and I'm not sure if they still do, use dolphins for mine detection and things. I'm sure someone under Stalin, one of his
gave a bear a gun.
Many crackpot, yeah. I mean, they put bombs on dogs, so give the bear a gun.
Dude.
But they
Yuri's.
But also just, I mean, that was like the 1950s were an insane era. I mean, and in the 60s as well, just the various things we our government tried to concoct to get rid of Castro. I mean, to take that as a point of departure for a game, not the assassination of Castro, but just that mentality where you're like, the sky's the limit. You know, when you're 2001, the movie could really be the future, and like, let's just come up with whatever bullshit we want and hope it works.
So, other interesting developments on the potential new games front, and I'm not really sure how to approach this. IGN had an interview with Factor 5 President Julian Egbrecht, where he
didn't say much.
He didn't say much, and most people. So the consensus on what he said, when you hear it in just a second, is that he meant that maybe there would be a fix for the controls. I have a different spin. He says, if we find a chance in the future that would bring Lair to an audience which didn't get any access, that would be fantastic. I can't say anything quite yet, but there might be something in the works there. We might have a chance to bring those back to the table, and hopefully if that should happen, they would give the game a second chance nevertheless. We definitely took a long look at the results, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, everybody thinks this means that he's going to retool the controls for the PS3
What
version
about a
of Lair.
hot fix, just a patch that lets you use the control?
I heard that rumor as well, like that there'll be a patch later. But I think the WiiWare game he's making is not Lair. And when he says that, like,
I don't think it's the WiiWare game. I think it's a game he's making.
Well, whenever he said that, like, his WiiWare engine is as good as the PS3 engine, really?
That was it.
Really?
What?
Why else would they start selling that? Why else start selling that your Wii engine is as good as a PS3 engine if you're not going to do a multi-platform?
Maybe I should have.
He doesn't own Lair.
He doesn't own. Sony owns Lair. Maybe I should have asked him, but at DICE, people were giving him kind of a wide berth because, like, after Lair, Julian was like, it's like damaged goods. It's like, how do you not talk about Lair around him?
Yeah. Well, we all know the Wii has been doing well. The Wii, and we've gotten some flack before when we've talked about sales numbers in Japan. Shane, then put this in perspective. Smash Brothers Brawl selling 8 million in Japan. Is there anybody who's going to now call us out and say that's really not that good?
No, did we ever say it wasn't good?
When we've quoted Wii sales before, we've been called out before for saying, "Oh, well, those sales aren't actually that good." What was it? What was the game? It was Zelda, wasn't it? Were we talking?
Zelda didn't sell well in Japan, but
it
Wii
sold
Sports,
hundreds of thousands, and we were. Go ahead.
No one's gonna argue. Million for Smash Brothers is great. It'll sell more here.
Yep.
And it's catching up with Wii Fit.
Which apparently is not out there in order to make you fit.
What the hell is it there for then?
We're not really sure.
Actually, you should go to Wii.com and read the latest in the Amazing Iwata Asks interview segment where he interviews Miyamoto about Wii Fit at length in incredible detail. Basically, the Ask Iwata thing has taken the press out of the equation. They don't need us. They do their own press, and those interviews are fantastic.
I love it. So here's the quote. I don't think.
Have you learned any interviewing tips from Iwata?
Not really, but he interviews his friends.
It's actually apparently the Wii Fit is a coming of age device because what it's actually aiming to do, according to Miyamoto-san, is aiming to make you aware of your body if you're standing still, and it tells.
Oh shit!
And it
Cherry Poppinator.
I mean,
you were supposed to leave that out there for someone else to say.
Wow, Fap Central.
It's a good interview. Go read the interview, actually.
Okay, it is a good interview. Also, on the Wii or casual game tip, Electronic Arts established the Blueprint this week. Now, Blueprint is a. Do you know some more about this?
It's a KRS-One album from the 80s. Loved it. Good stuff.
It's also an MC, too, from NYC. You might have heard him.
I'm so
Also
glad
a
you
Jay-Z
told
album.
me to hand this off to you, N guy.
No.
So I'm glad to tried to hand it off to you.
What's this pie in the sky hippie bullshit? Skip.
No,
Skip.
So
Not here. Skip
no,
it.
so Neil. When Neil stepped down as GM, came back up to the Bay Area along with Alan Yu, his director of A&R. Alan, please come on the show and explain what that's all about. But anyway, in some ways, it's like I think so it's called Blueprint, but
yes.
The term I had heard thrown about internally at EA was transmedia, and so I think they're looking to do projects that can work across multiple media and not so much sort of what's that term that Wada-san uses? Polymorphic content. I don't think it's quite so much that, but I think in a way, if you look at what Neil tried to do with Majestic, it was ahead of its time when you compare it to I Love Bees and like other ARGs. And so now that the technology's there, and especially with the rise of social networks that really support this stuff in a way that the internet wasn't quite ready for and CD-ROM wasn't quite ready for when he launched it, I don't have anything close to full details, but I think this is the kind of stuff they're going to be exploring. They did Smarty Pants on Facebook, and they're doing other things. And I think it's an interesting... What I like about it is I felt that EA had a narrow definition of the business it was in. It was AAA games. right? Just games that make a lot of money. And it wasn't sort of the broader sort of, interactive entertainment. And that's what I like about this is like there's so many more things you do. And Nintendo's really shown a lot of things you can do with games. MTV with Rock Band and Red Octane with Guitar Hero.
Virtual Lower East Side.
Exactly, like all that stuff. And so it's interesting to see sort of EA sort of define itself a little more broadly.
I just hope the quality arises more than stuff like Ninja Reflex.
Why are you hating on Ninja Reflex?
Because Ninja Reflex is a joke. It's a joke. I think that's great that they're broadening, but the quality has got to step it up.
And the price has got to step down.
So these are all. Interestingly enough, most of the casual gaming space is dominated by small teams, quick-to-produce games, the exact sort of thing that you might do in your garage, and the exact sort of thing that EA CEO John Riccitiello declared dead at DICE in a keynote he was delivering, where he talked about the necessities to consolidate into larger corporations to fund the 200-person teams necessary to deliver AAA titles.
I had missed this thing because I was being interviewed, but I wonder if he's declaring them dead or declaring EA's desire to destroy them.
I think
interesting point.
It's just wrong. Before you skip, it's wrong on a few points. One is I think what he actually is referring to is that he sees a death of like the independent studio rather than the garage game maker. To say that garage games are gone is just sort of absurd right now, especially when you look at PC, even the bigger ones among them like Introversion. So we're all familiar with those. But then even the smaller independent studios, they're not dead either. If you look at like Gearbox or something, they managed to make games for Sega, for 2K, for Ubisoft, for all these big things, and they're not necessarily going away either. Certainly, it's hard as hell to get funding for your big budget games, but I don't know.
Well, I think
that was just like
in the console space, in the era of XBLA and PSN, he's completely wrong.
I don't think that's what he's talking about, though. I will say that, and I've probably said this on the show before, is that what's interesting is that the people who do seem to be able to make big AAA games and sort of be in control of their own destiny and be independent,
that's where it's
came from a PC heritage, not console heritage. Most of them are sort of snapped up, so it's the Epics, the ids, the Valves, Gearbox, exactly. Even if they're now making, focus more on console games, they came out of PC. Can you really bootstrap yourself to the level of a Valve on console now from scratch? I don't know.
No, but you have to admit that XBLA, PSN, and WiiWare moving forward are a new venue for those garage developers.
This is just the notion
as his mobile phone,
his use of garage,
right?
Big garage,
right.
All right, so I threw this story in here because I thought it was kind of funny, just the premise of it, which is that Dead Rising has been facing a legal battle over time. You're right, you're rolling eyes, Shane, because it is kind of funny,
It's against New Line, who's very desperate right now. I mean, go read about what New Line's going through right now.
So the latest development in the Dead Rising versus Dawn of the Dead lawsuit is that Capcom has issued a complaint for declaratory relief, which basically amounts to them issuing a statement to the judge of why they should be released from this suit. I like this part. So here's the part that's funny out of it. They say that the reason they should be the game does not infringe on any copyrights owned by the owners is because any similarities between Dead Rising and George Romero's Dawn of the Dead are based on the wholly unpredictable idea of humans battling zombies in a shopping mall. Wait, you mean you can't protect the intellectual property of zombies?
If Romero made zombies up, he would have sued everybody, and he didn't. So there you go.
All right, whatever. Next up, we have an interesting story that's coming online as of yesterday evening, which I will be willing to admit that I have only had a moment to look at because we just got it immediately before the before the taping of the show, which is Rory Mannion, who, Sean, you hooked us up with a story.
Oh,
this is the story on the political contributions of various publishers to the political campaigns for presidency. So
I think the fun there, it's more of just a fun story. Of course, you can't look at say a presidential campaign contribution on the part of someone who's involved in making a game as a Rosetta Stone to like implicit messages inside of the games that you play. But it's fun nonetheless and often eye-opening. Like, for example, Will Wright is on there, and I was very surprised. I don't know why. I was surprised to see that he had contributed the max amount possible to Rudolph Giuliani's campaign. And it was like
did.
That was a waste.
It made me sort of ask myself, like, why did I think he would vote this way? Did I ever have any reason for believing that? Is it from his games? So it's kind of fun to do something like that, I mean, there's a preponderance of Ron Paul supporters among Activision and things like that, and it's like whatever you...
Really?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Wow.
It's basically this
Well,
all comes from
what I noticed was-
Fundraise 2008, the Huffington site.
Right. What I noticed, it was all Republicans and Activision pretty much. And so I was sort of wondering, and so now I got to replay Guitar Hero 3 and Call of Duty 4 and
Call of Duty 4.
and look for conservative themes.
Right. That's so yeah, obviously, like I said, it's not going to be the Rosetta Stone, but it's fun. Have fun with
It's okay. They're on the Ron Paul tip.
And dig around on that site. You'll find more.
They're just anarchists.
Gabe Newell was also mentioned on here. He donated to Christopher Dodd, Democrat. I mean, he
was out. He was in, and he was out.
he was in early.
Any love for Obama?
Well,
there's some.
Of
Yeah,
course, there's some Obama love.
it looked like we got some from Blizzard on there.
All I gotta say is, like, if you're rolling with Giuliani, like, drop the zero, get with the hero. You know what I'm saying?
The Giuliani thing I didn't understand. I was like, hey,
I'm from New York, and I don't understand it.
So,
all right, Sean, have you been playing Team Fortress 2?
I played Badlands today for about an hour of experience. I could say, everyone go and update your Team Fortress 2 on PC. It's a fucking
Immediately?
awesome map.
Any news on when that 360 is going to get, or PS3 going to get it?
Next time I talk to Valve, we might have the opportunity during GDC. We will, and I'll try to get an update on that. But
Real quick, what top 2 things were good about the map?
about Badlands, a lot of vertical space. I like to play Soldier, and I like to play Demo Man, so any sort of trick jumping, it's perfect because you can just boom, rocket or pipe jump up to a high point. So far, it's really hyperactive. I mean, everyone tends to get in these areas, and it's just like the perfect mix of places to hide, places to rocket jump over, sentry gun placement areas for pyros. Just the reason why every Valve-made map works so well with Team Fortress 2 is that they understand each class and the need to cater to each class, provide something for everyone, and so far it looks like they're nailing it. So
Cool.
Over on the ever-popular MTV multiplayer blog, employing the former One-Up News editor, Mr. Patrick Klepek, and the ever-venerable Stephen Tosillo. Stephen got an interview with Cliffy B, and he talked about, among other things, the PC gaming market space, where Cliffy said, and of course the poll quote is, that PC developers are in disarray. The bigger picture is, he says, I think people would rather make a game that sells 4.5 million copies than a million, and Gears is at 4.5 million right now on 360. I think the PC is just in disarray. What's driving the PC is sim-types games and WoW and a lot of stuff that's in web-based interface. You just click on it and play. He goes on to say that what we're doing right now is making AAA games on consoles, and that's where we're at.
couple comments for that. I mean, he's right. PC is in a transitional state. I'm not going to say it's like in total disarray. The other thing, though, is, I mean, you can't look at the comparative sales of Gears of War on PC versus Gears of War on Xbox and come to all these conclusions, because a lot of people that wanted to play Gears that are PC gamers like myself played it on Xbox. You
can do it though for Call of Duty 4.
Right.
It came out day and date.
And then, you got piracy. I mean, I'm not going to argue. Like, clearly, PC is like it's in a it's in a tough and in a transitional state, but not what else to say other than just to point out those facts that, I mean, like, there's a couple other factors. And like UT3, I didn't think was that good. So
you're missing the other good quote where he goes on to say he's not going to make fucking Cooking Mama. That's later in the interview.
Would you like to know? We have that actually. He says the hardcore are the target audience for what I do, and I'm okay with that. I don't want to win over your little college sister, because that's not the kind of game I do. I'm not going to make Zack and Wiki. I'm not going to make fucking Cooking Mama. But that's okay.
Well, here's the thing. His analysis is spot on for the most part, but I will say this. When he talked about web-based games, I mean, that's why I was like, the moment that it announced Quake Zero, I was really, really interested in that. Like, I sort of wonder, like, how much will that support? For instance, does that mean that EA would be able to do Medal of Honor, Allied Assault, which was based on Quake tech in the in browser? Same thing with EA's Battlefield expansion.
Right.
Like, I think if the PC developers get creative, there is still stuff that could be done on PC, but it's going to be a challenge to do those big AAA games, especially when they're going to, a lot of them have to lead on console now.
Right. It's not even lead, as long as they come out. I mean, or the same time. But I mean, like, as long as there are multiple platforms. Clearly, Team Fortress 2's got its audience. And piracy is like the other big problem beneath all this. I mean, that's a discussion for another day, but that's definitely an issue.
We will follow up on piracy, I assure you.
Yeah.
And just to reassure anybody out there who was really wondering, at the Blizzard keynote during DICE, they talked about games they'd canceled. They didn't mention StarCraft Ghost. Totillo did a follow-up interview. Yes, they intentionally didn't mention it. That's because while they were working on Wrath of the Lich King and StarCraft 2, they went out of their way to note to him that, no, it was never technically canceled.
They did say that sort of Swingin' Ape, though, kind of got absorbed into the bloodstream and doesn't exist anymore.
So there you go. Who knows what'll happen? But StarCraft Ghost, I wouldn't be surprised to see it swing back around again. It's too compelling of an idea. It's
like I said in our meeting the other day, when StarCraft 2 comes out and that buzz is really high, never know. Maybe
it'd be a perfect spot, wouldn't it?
Yep.
It would be an absolutely perfect spot. Just like this.
Something for the console guys.
This has
StarCraft
been
2, though, who's going to play that? Like,
Koreans.
That's just another Cooking Mama game. I think Cliffy B's just jealous of Blizzard.
Oh, dear. And there you have it, Cliff. Let us know what you think at boards.oneup.com. That's where we'll be hanging out. So that's like this place. This place is pretty good. What are you thinking, guy? You ready to come back next week?
I'm excited to come back next week.
We have a week's worth of shows planned for you next week, for sure, starting on Tuesday, possibly starting on Monday. We're kind of cooking something. We'll see what happens, and who knows? We've got what do you want to throw out there as the highlight? What do you think is the highlight, Andrew? I'm super hyped for Lauren Lanning being on.
Amy Hennig, Lauren Lanning.
Amy Hennig, Lauren Lanning.
Eric and Kim on GFW.
It's straight up, like, if people are overlooking it, Warren Spector and Paul Wedgwood together are going to be fantastic. Even if you guys, I mean, a lot of people know Warren.
Loki's
both
really
of these
cool.
guys are really intelligent.
Yeah, they are really
and
cool.
really.
You
Yeah,
have to ask Warren
it's gonna be,
about when he called himself the Walmart version of Will Wright.
yeah, of course.
That was a good quote, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so clear yourselves out some space until next week for Sean Elliott and Guy Kroll. This is quite a lineup. I love it. Andrew Pfister, Shane, we need a nickname for you, Shane. No. Shane Bettenhausen. I don't know. Why not? Brian Intihar, Sporto, Fragile Eagle. This is Garnet Lee.
I have
Thanks for
like 5
listening.
nicknames. You want one?
No, give me one. Yeah.
Are we Ghost or StarCraft Ghost?
We are StarCraft Ghost.